Off. And here we are, folks. From Sorry for the technical difficulties. We are here now live and with wonderful guests tonight: Daniel Velez, Josh
Hello.
Finney, and Kat Rocha. And tonight we are talking about the power of not only the '80s, but of cyberpunk, of indie comics, everything. We're talking. It's like the singularity of awesome,
The
except without
power
no.
of the 80s.
The power of the '80s. It is in our blood. It's in our veins. It's in our
Take it to the
headbands
limit.
and mullets.
Oh, come on. Neon and cocaine. You can't go wrong.
Well, you can if you're doing like 100 mile an hour around a curve. You really go wrong in that regard. Unless your car's like hit, or you got like your Auto Man, which I don't think cocaine wouldn't affect him. But is Auto Man, in y'all's opinion, is Auto Man cyberpunk?
No.
Come on, he's a computer man. He's cars.
No. He's a superhero. Although there is an argument to be made that Knight Rider definitely skimmed the edge of cyberpunk. Often an insult I'll use when I see someone do or label something cyberpunk, or if they've done something that isn't cyberpunk but they claim it is, I'll say, look, Knight Rider is more cyberpunk than that crap. And often it is.
Yeah, I mean, he had AI. I mean, Kit was AI, and
Well, no. Let me break it down. He
Okay.
looked like a rock star.
Yeah.
He drove a cool car.
mm-hmm.
He worked for a private para-government organization that was privately funded.
Yep.
He had an ultra high-tech car.
Yep.
He had a false identity, and his face had been reworked.
Mhm.
And all of his enemies were high-tech villains who worked above the law.
Yes, and he had a synth soundtrack too. His theme song.
Yes, yeah, he did. So it really did kind of skim the edge of that cyberpunk vibe.
Well, it's funny how that works out because I mean, like he had it had a lot of that the '80s trappings, of course, because being the deck, but that like the intelligent car with the light bar in the front of it. Look, that it's so futuristic. It was like, the future is now. Knight Rider, and then they had to do Knight Rider 2000, which is just silly. I love it, but it's silly. I'm in love because of the Jan Hammer score.
They
But
that could have worked, and every reboot of Knight Rider has failed, including Team Knight Rider,
Oh, don't even bring that up.
because they did not understand the core concept of why that series worked. And what it was essentially it was a high-tech James Bond.
Well, not only that, but it wasn't that it was a buddy cop story. I mean, the car actually wasn't the star of the show.
The buddy thing came later.
Yeah. I mean, really, Kit was originally just a tool. It was all about Michael. And that's what made it. If it wasn't Hasselhoff playing Michael Knight, I really don't think the show could have succeeded because it needed Hasselhoff.
he really did, because at that point, without him, without having that charisma, if the lead, if the lead wouldn't work.
I mean, it was along the same lines as the absolutely the most cyberpunk of all the Bond films, which was Duran Duran did the theme.
Oh,
for
View to a Kill.
View to a Kill. I mean, yeah, there's that whole middle part that just should have been cut. But I mean, Zoran was a cyberpunk villain in every way. And he even had Grace Jones.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
But the thing about this, and also his plot was like actually a good idea. Now, in retrospective, it was a good idea to just take out Silicon Valley.
He's a hero now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like, he would have been a hero. It's like, you may hate me now. It's like, like in 30 years, you'll be wishing I'd done this. Oh my God.
I saved you from Zuckerberg.
In
the cult of Google.
Yeah, they're gonna spy on you. 1984 is now, and all that. But yeah, it's like, and it's great. And funny way to go from that to transition into, we have Daniel, who's done Red, Cyberpunk Fairytale, Little Red Riding Hood, It's Cyberpunk, which, and you think about it, it shouldn't work. But
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, why would you
but
say that?
well, that's the thing. It's like when you have a lot of people, when they mash up, like they emphasize too much on the fairy tale. Like I'm saying, it's like too much. Like it. But for everything I've seen, and yes, I wish I wish I had a copy in front of me right now. Issues aside, but I was like that. Like I could look at a book and be like, I don't know if I want to read that. I want to read the book.
The art alone is just utterly gorgeous.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And it's also, it's not like a fairy tale, like a fantasy mashup with. It's not like Shadowrun or anything. It is like it is like
That's good to
Cyberpunk
point that out.
That's a selling point right there. It's not Shadowrun.
not Shadowrun with no elves or anything. It's like it's the name's Red Riding Hood. It's has the what do you call it, the underpinnings of the story or the morality tale of the story, but not in the character of Red Riding Hood. But it's science fiction. Like it's in a
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still need to get the. Is the graphic novel available yet?
It's available on my website. I'm setting it up for Amazon, so maybe it'll.
As soon as you get it on Amazon, I will pick it up.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
And review it, as reviews do count and are very needed.
Yeah. And if
What?
anyone wants to see a preview of it, it's redcomicbook.com. Take a look. I got.
Yeah, actually, you need to see this, Kat.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you bring that up because actually, when I got into comics, my main focus was doing cyberpunk. It's just by chance that I fell into doing horror. That's what that was the project that caught everyone's eye.
Mhm.
I mean, the first book we did was Utopiates,
Mhm.
which is hardcore cyberpunk. Have you read that one yet, Larry?
Yes, I read the first issue because I know there's a collection, but I had only read the first issue and it was fantastic. And we talked about this before on a previous episode that you'd come on about how like on downside about the cyberpunk is people love it, but they don't want to pay for it sometimes. Like there's certain.
At the time when I did it, and I kept trying to appeal to the cyberpunk crowd and going all to the message boards and stuff. The shitty thing about it is you had all these Zoe Quinn types. Cyberpunks don't pay. We go to a torrent and read it. And so, well, fuck you then. I can't make any more of them.
What?
And that's what happened.
Oh.
Yeah, it really kills that momentum. It's like when that happens, like these people, oh my god, this book is it's the greatest thing ever. Am I actually? Are you actually paying for it? Or are you torrenting it? Or
if I had $10 for every shithead who came to me at a convention and said, "Oh, when's Utopias 2 coming out? The first one was awesome." I said, and they then later let slip that they'd read it on a torrent. Like, well, it's never coming out. That's why.
Okay, see, for you, they let slip. For me, they were fully blatant about it. In fact, some of them were even bragging that that's how they got it. And it's like, well, then fuck you. It's not going to happen. By the way, I'm looking at Red. Josh just pulled up the website.
Mm-hmm.
My God, this is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
humble him, yes. Embarrass him with the kindness. He can't take it. That's his kryptonite.
Well, no, the thing is the quote anime look.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do it. Very few people do it well.
This is flawless.
This is flawless. It is very much so. The style matches the world and the story, and it's not a gimmick. It is definitely a storytelling.
It's almost got a Vampire Hunter D blood.
A
What was it
bloodlust.
called? The second
Bloodlust.
one.
Bloodlust?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the
kind of
Yoshi
Vampire
Hammer
Hunter D
tree.
bloodlust style.
Yeah, this is we talked about me and Larry was talking about that last time I was on. That is like my guy, like
Oh,
Kawajiri, like Madhouse in the 90s.
yeah.
Actually,
Ninja
I was
Scroll,
thinking Escaflowne.
That too.
Well, didn't they work on that Madhouse? Wasn't it Studio Madhouse as well?
Maybe. I believe so. But I'd have to double check on that.
Well, has a richer almost has like
Sorry.
nerds everywhere. No, but when I first saw it, at first I do want to call I was not going to call it Daniel Velez, but it looked like he took screen caps from something. It looks like when they do those like screen cap like from anime and then like screen cap it and then putting borders and everything, like do like one of those like fumetti or whatever they call them, like taking like animated or they'll do it live action, which is just
like
weird.
a screenshot like from a cartoon, and then
Exactly, that's what it looks like. It's so crisp and so good looking. It looks like like 100 people like in some sweatshop somewhere at a sweatshop animation house are just putting that together. But to see you actually do the art, like as you post that on your page and everything on your Twitter page, to see you do that, it's like you can't deny that unless you're going to like, all right, worker 5,283, get on that thing. Like he's got 2 fingers, he dressed them off because of nerves and whatever. But it looks great. It's just fantastic.
Thank you. I had to draw it like traditionally with a pencil.
That's what's so. It doesn't look like that though. It's so weird. It's so weird as in it stands out and it's crisp, but it has weight to it.
I would go as far as to say the fact that you did do it in pencil, which, my God, the work on that must have been insane.
It's pretty.
The fact that you can see traces of the graphite gives it more of a grittier look. It kind of helps with the cyberpunk vibe.
Thanks.
A lot of the anime cyberpunk is just too damn vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, especially the new stuff. Like,
new
stuff is just like just so crisp and so HD. Like, I don't like it. Like, I'm kind of a man frozen in time. Like, I think the peak was like 1999 or whenever the 90s left for anime, personally.
Kind of.
And then here it spots, and then I like stuff too after that, but I feel like that was like.
You're not the only one. That right there, that summarizes everything. Pretty much after Cowboy Bebop, I kind of lost interest in pretty much everything. It was like, because you got 0083 Stardust Memories, Gundam, which is basically Top Gun meets, like lots of other things. But nukes, it's great. It's like Top Gun less gay, but it's a great look. It's a great look, and it's like in your style reminds me a lot of that Dangle.
Or you could watch Yukikaze, which is like Top Gun but more gay.
Hey.
Nah, I don't know about that. Not my kind of.
What I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I don't think I wanted to. But yeah, it's like I think there's something like that peak of '99 that makes a ton of sense. Like I said, there's been a few things since then, but very rarely. I mean, like I will give it the time of day. But it's funny to see that influence and see like that going from the animated screen to the page and then carrying that over and not letting it be some kind of like where someone's like, where's the influence way too much to the point where it drags everything down. It's like style over substance, and the pages that you've presented and everything, the preview for Red, and it just it stands out. It's like it's like there is a graphic, like there's a lot of people that can draw pretty pictures but can't tell a story to save their life. You actually telling a story, and it kind of kills me. I've not been able to actually read the thing. It's like I could see the story being presented. It's like watching going by and there's a movie playing. I was like, that's a really interesting movie, and not been able to finish watching it, kind of thing.
That's how I felt reading the preview.
Yeah, exactly. It works. It works.
Like, okay, well, what's that? I'm sorry. Let me make sure I get this right. I just want to make sure. We're talking to Daniel, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Daniel, I promise, once you get it on Amazon, I will purchase it.
Awesome.
And review it.
Well, you got a guaranteed sale from me no matter what, because I need that on my shelf. I need it on my shelf bad, man. So I don't, what do you ever have to do to get it on Amazon or whatever you have to do where
Larry, you'll get your fix, don't worry.
Come on,
help me.
I need it in my veins, man. I need it in my veins.
Yeah, I think it's great that we've have this cyberpunk thing is really big right now. Like, I mean, I was working on this thing for a long time, just story wise and stuff. And then it was maybe a couple of years ago, I was like, let me hunker down and do this thing for real. And now there's some kind of cyberpunk resurgence is happening at that time. And it's whoa, what did that mean? I don't know.
Well, I think also there's just a vacuum of it because nobody's actually producing that. And honestly, from what I've seen of Red, I've not seen the whole thing, of course, but beating that horse to death. But it's better looking than that when Pat, when Pat Lee did Dark Minds. That's the
Mhm.
closest. It's your book is better looking than Pat Lee
Mhm.
because it's actually the background, the mixture of backgrounds, foregrounds, characters, and everything. His stuff was a little bit too rough around the edges. Yours is a lot better. It's like if Pat Lee actually took effort, he could have done what you do, that kind of thing. It's like yes, I'm basically throwing a quote unquote professionals or from Marvel and DC and this and that. I'm like, yeah, but your stuff looks better. That's my opinion. So
Pat Lee's coloring on Dreamwave, that company's coloring was insane. Like I can't imagine the amount of people. I just imagine like a bunch of like rows and people on computers just coloring one page because it looks like an animation cell, like with like all these layers and filters. Like, and I remember when I was coloring the book, I was looking at that for inspiration, like trying to figure out how they did it and try to approximate that. But it's I don't know. They spent a lot of time coloring, more time than I would.
Does a page take for you?
One time I timed myself, and it was like to do an entire page from like nothing to color. Probably like 3 days, maybe 3.5, depending on the coloring.
Doing everything yourself, going from pencils, got to scan them in, and whether you digitally ink or you traditionally ink.
I didn't even ink it. I just.
Oh, you didn't. So that's from pencils to colors.
Yeah, like I just draw.
Oh my god, I didn't realize that. I thought you inked it.
I might go in with Photoshop and just click in like the dark parts or something. Like if there's a lot of what would be black, I won't like fill it in with pencil and then change it. I'll just select what that is and just fill it with black. So so it's like sort of digitally inked in a way, but I still leave the pencil edges so it has that rough feel, like what Josh was saying.
Well, it works. It works. That's for damn sure. Can't deny that. But one thing I really wanted to talk about this evening was both. You three. Josh and Kat doing the Casefile Arkham books, and Daniel, you doing Red, and you're doing second. You're currently working on a second volume, getting that worked on, which is great. Which is new content that isn't from some that isn't from some corporate, not going to say corporate hack, but it's somebody that's actually a true independent person. Because I was thinking about this, I was watching these old Hero Illustrated. The Hero Illustrated was a rival to Wizard at the time. They imploded, of course, but they had Hero Illustrated TV and the interviews with like Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, all this stuff like the '90s. Like it's hilarious to look at it now. Like to talk about this hot comic books and all that, whatever. This is before the implosion was happening, but nobody knew it. But these are the people that these like indie darlings. There were guys working for Marvel and DC and everything like that. These were not, the grass leagues. And even if you look back in the '80s, I mean, for every Eastman Laird, you had like Rick Veitch and Stephen Bissett, and the rest of the guys went on Tundra and everything. And these guys worked for DC. They did some, mainly DC stuff.
Matt Wagner.
Matt Wagner, Matt Wagner was like a solo. Yeah, Matt Wagner, he's like one of those. Like Matt Wagner is in that Eastman and Laird camp. They were like nobodies, and then made themselves something.
Right. Yeah. And Richard and Wendy Peeney and
Colleen Dorn,
Dave Sim. Right?
Dave Sim. Dave Sim, yeah, definitely. Mike Barron and Steve Rude, like they were doing Nexus, like back before they started doing other stuff. But yeah, like that kind of stuff. But when they say independent, a lot of say like, oh, it's just a writer or artist, mainly artists, that just leave a big company and start doing their own, create their own thing. It's not the same as somebody having an idea and actually putting it out there. But both, you three do not do floppies. You've done graphic. Well, in the past you may have done floppies. I know Utopians was 10 issues.
No, it was originally a 4-issue miniseries.
Okay.
I'd written it as a short story. And it was really just one issue, and a publisher picked it up and said, okay, well, where are the other 3? So I wrote them. And the series actually at the time did really well. And then there were rights issues, and we left. We moved on to do another story with a company called Archaea. And ironically, it was a fighter. You were talking about Top Gun. It was a fighter pilot story, but in a Blade Runner setting. And unfortunately, I'd say the shortcoming of the series, even though the series is by far my best selling, it's kind of something I'm very bitter about, is we are owed like $20,000 for the sales.
Whoa.
We never received. That series, which was a cyberpunk fighter pilot story about cyborg pilots, and then after the experience with 2 publishers, we said, screw it, we'll do it ourselves. And economically speaking, there's no point in doing floppies. There really isn't, especially for the types of people that read our books.
Well, that, and you're limited by the episodic nature of the medium, 24 to 36 pages, where with a graphic novel, a chapter is as long as you want it to be.
And the first title we released is, we got the rights back for Utopia. I went through, I remastered it all, and I colored the art in this style that I'm still extremely proud of. And it did okay. I mean, unfortunately, the market had started to shift. Things started getting weird with the social justice people. Hardcore cyberpunk story about drug addicts wasn't resonating. And then unfortunately, the audience we did have was torrenting. It was getting it through torrents, which I think was the ultimate downfall of the book. Now, maybe it's changed because we've seen an uptick in sales for it now, and maybe just the tide is turning. I don't know. And truth be told, I'm a little envious here of our co-guest Daniel, because I mean, honestly, that is kind of where my heart's always been, is kind of these gritty, hardcore cyberpunk stories. It's just other things succeeded better. Nobody foresaw Casefile Arkham doing as well as it did. That was just kind of a lark. But I don't regret it.
Yeah, it's like that kind of thing, like that. Seeing you all do your thing as far as the graphic novel, it is. I need that in a way. I need the instant gratification. And also I'm such a control freak, and I got such a mindset of the DIY comics thing. For the longest time, Daniel, you never had one of my comics, and Josh and Kat have. I sent them pretty much everything I had.
I gotta get
it. Amazing.
I gotta get.
I'll reach out through I'll DM you with like whatever, and I'll get you hooked up.
Yeah,
but I do everything. I wanted to do everything myself, so I have myself to thank or blame. And for my Ginger Dread stuff, where I said, "Hey, let's do a color cover. Let's do it smaller and everything like that." And it was like it turned out so well, the look of it and the feel of it. And it's like, wait, if I could do this ash can size, 8.5 by 11, when it's closed up and everything, and like this could actually work. And I'm like, I could maybe do up to like 60 pages, even though it sounds crazy and madman like, but it's like one of those European style, like most of those like European, like a Black Sad, which the comic Black Sad, that's like usually like 50, 60 pages. And I was like, wait a second, I could do something along those lines. I also love those Marvel super specials, like the adapting movies in a comic format, which some of them are amazing. It's like to adapt Temple of Doom into a comic, like, and avoid hearts being ripped, like, kind of go a little around it. The child slavery, beating the children, burning people, Black Sleep Akali, all that stuff. Blade Runner, avoiding, like they kind of. When Zora's taking her shower and then strangles Deckard, and then runs, and then Deckard shoots her in the back. Instead of shooting in the back, the nudity thing, they kind of work their way around that. But it's like those telling a epic story within 40, 60 pages can be done, and I think that is something I want to do. But I needed that, like 16 pages. Here you go, it's done, it's out. It's a one shot kind of thing. I don't think I could see myself doing monthly books like that, but I like the idea of being able to make it myself, and I can't do perfect bound or any of that, the glue stitch and everything.
Methamphetamines, Larry.
I could, yes, I could. This is South. I could get that.
That would change everything.
Larry, weaker making comic books. Like I'm at the Staples photocopy. Hey man, how's it going? Don't worry, this comic is gonna be great. It's gonna have a lot of fun and a lot of action. It's gonna be wonderful. And I'm, don't worry, don't go to cops, don't go to cops. It's okay.
You know, the thing is we've met guys like that where they're tweaking all night with with Cartoon Network on the TV and and a bottle of booze on one side and a glue stick on the other, and they'd stay up like for 30 hours straight making mini comics.
Well, it's something I love doing though. It's like I said, it's something I've been doing for actually 11 years now. I started back 2007, and I've just gradually I got my little zone, and I didn't want to get. I got my comfort zone because I was able to make these comics of different shapes and sizes, mainly like really short stories, and it's like I just want to tell this story. It's only going to take this many pages, and I could stretch it out to like 120 pages or so, like graphic novel length, like appropriate length. It just wouldn't. It'd be a lot of filler, and I was like, I don't want that. And it's another thing. I hate filler. I hate stories with filler. And both Casefile Arkham books, there's no filler in there. It leaves you wanting more. It's like that's what I want books to be. I don't want mediocre filler. I want good content with solid content. That's pretty sure what Red's going to be. But yeah, it's
what would you call a filler? Like an example.
Page after page of 2-page spread pinups.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a book that DC put out not too long ago called Damage, which is just their version of the Hulk, and it's just double-page spreads of pretty much just not the Hulk punching like tanks and buildings, and that's it. Like maybe punching an antagonist or somebody else. Nothing really happens, and a lot of it's like you have the Quentin Tarantino-fication of comics that Bendis kind of helped. He did it in Powers as well, not just in the Ultimate Spider-Man and a couple other books. But where characters are talking about nothing, it's like it's like where hey, it works great for Seinfeld, and hey, able to pad out a movie, Toby Wong, fucking Charlie Chan, it's like that kind of stuff. It works for a movie, does not work for I'm paying $5, $10, $20 for a 100-page comic or what have you, give or take, between 20 and 100 pages. And it just, there's no forward momentum. Like, that's life for you. There are slow moments. Like, don't give me that crap. Don't give me that existential bullshit. I want a story that actually has, a story, but it's like that, not that J.J. Abrams bullshit with the, mystery box. It's not
get up.
Oh, you're making shit up, and also it's not about where you get to. It's the journey along the way. Fuck that! No, I want content. It's like, all right, you introduce giant monsters, smoke. Explain to me that, and like I'll go along with your journey. Don't just say, well, it doesn't matter what they are. You just these characters you follow. The
journey has to have a destination.
Exactly, not just we were all in heaven's waiting room. Oh, fuck you!
Well, I think the destination is. Abrams' bank account.
Yeah.
That's
that killed it.
No. I had to take a drink. Because my throat was getting dry. But no, you're right. It's J.J. Abrams and the rest of these people, and they do these stories. And I've seen.
I don't have any plot right now. Put a lens flare in.
Pretty much. Oh my God! Blind somebody. Put some lens flare. But to see these people do stories and. It's not just corporate comics, but it's also you see a lot of these people. We all have our there are. I want to see like more cyberpunk books. I want to see more. If you want to do superhero stuff, do it really like.
Find me an artist, Larry. That's all I ask.
That's the thing.
I've got scripts like you wouldn't believe.
See, right now I've been inking. Neon Trash. I finished the cover, front and back cover is done. Trade dress, whatever you want to call it, the Indica, logos, all that. That's done. I'm inking page 1, so I got, I haven't finished that, so I got 15 pages have not touched yet, but I'm on my way. I'm on my way to Neon Trash. It's getting done. But while working on that, I had ideas for a superhero story that's I was like, I was like, superhero, like, oh fuck, superheroes are stupid. But I'm like, nobody's getting superhero stuff right. And also, it'd be my version of it, so it's going to be twisted and kind of messed up. Like, there's some stuff I want to do. It's like, it's example. There's a woman, my cat's in a tree, and the guy's like, why? Why should I waste my time rescuing a cat? I don't think there's a cat. There's not a epidemic of cat skeletons decorating trees. But you can't leave my cat up there. It's like, if a cat wants to come down, it'll come down. I'm not going to waste time doing this. I'm wasting time talking to you. Like, this basically hero just giving this lady shit. Like, this is like the whole thing. It's like, meow, meow. Like, it's like, if that was a baby up in the tree, I'd go up there and rescue it, no problem. But it's a cat. If it don't come down, then it's its own fault that it dies. You know, it's like this brutal way.
And
I was like,
your accent.
Hmm?
He needs to talk with your accent too.
Oh God, I get out that trait. Oh, thank you. But yeah, stuff like that. It's like that'd be funny. And there's like other stuff. That's like the milder of it. Like that's better written on the page. I just don't want to over tread it too much. But
sorry, you were going to say something, Kat?
Well, I was actually going to say, since we are also talking about indie comics, you mentioned nobody does superheroes right anymore.
Yeah.
I strongly suggest you check out The Uniques by Adam Withers and Comfort Love. Yes, that is her name. That book
does it right.
It does it right. It really does it right. And the other thing that I found amazing is that they had the balls to tackle male rape and it in a way that was disturbing and not gratuitous.
It is everything the Teen Titans should be. I mean, they act like real teenagers. And they understand superheroes. So yeah, total shout out to Adam and Comfort.
Totally.
The Uniques. But just out of curiosity, so we don't go too far off track, I want to hear from Daniel. What gave you the idea to do Red Riding Hood as Cyberpunk? I mean, I'm sure this is the typical first question you get in an interview, but
yeah, it was just a conversation with my friend. Like, we were just thinking about a comic book that we wanted to do. I have a writing partner, and he was originally going to draw it. And part of the comic, he did start to draw it, but he got caught up with other things, so I took over the drawing of it. But I don't know, we're just spitballing things. We wanted to do a cyberpunk story. That was like, the main thing. And then we were thinking of something that could compete with a superhero, just to give it an iconic look, and just thought of like fairy tales. I mean, it's been done before, like fairy tales mixed with like science fiction and stuff. But I know that when
people,
yeah, definitely, yeah, exactly, which I love. Right,
it's a great film.
Yeah, and that's what I like. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do. Get it back to Shadowrun, like. Or this fantasy science fiction. I want to do science fiction.
Yeah.
So it was basically that simple. And then we just did character designs, but we wanted to give it that anime feel, because I know a lot of people draw in that style, the manga style, but ours is called, I don't know what they call it, like in Japan, I forget what they call it, Bishonen?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it either.
It basically means action comic, or specifically boys comic, but yeah, it has lots of action, lots of hard lines.
I like ecchi or ichi.
Of course you do. Of course you
do. So yeah, and then it was just about the story. So the story is so Red Riding Hood, she works for a private security firm, and her grandmother falls victim to this bioterror attack in a shopping mall. So she has to uncover the mystery of who's behind it, and it's this terrorist organization. And she hooks up with her ex-boyfriend, who's now an investigative journalist, an independent journalist, and they have to uncover the mystery. So it gets into government conspiracies, it gets into the military-industrial complex and stuff like that.
Well, just out of curiosity, and it's very interesting that you came up with Red. I'm sitting on an anthology right now. It's prose. It's not a comic. which is an anthology of post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk retellings of fairy tales
Oh,
that hopefully will be out by the end of the year with any luck, that I've been sitting on. So that was another reason I was really interested in what you're doing. I've got my own story in there. We can worry about that later. But no, getting back to your story, though, when you said you're trying to preserve it isn't Shadowrun, which just makes me cringe. It's that you're trying to tell what I guess what would you call them? Life lesson and cautionary tale that all the fairy tales typically were.
right.
Does your Red Riding Hood story include the undercurrent theme of a girl blooming into womanhood and the risks of sex?
Not not in this one. not really. No.
Oh, you don't?
Well, I mean, sort of, but not. It's not the primary theme of this arc. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly, well, the theme of the story right now is it's renewal. So she went through, in the story, I guess not to spoil the story, but she went through a series of hardships. She grew up like she's an orphan, and her grandmother raised her basically, and she lost her home and had to join the military, and basically and she lost her boyfriend and all this, so she's like basically trying to renew what she had. That's like the theme of the story. And the cautionary tales, has to do with fairy tales, has to do with basically the stuff we're dealing with right now, like government surveillance, the warning of the police state and all this. So
does anyone wear a grandma suit?
No.
Nobody kills the
breaking his
grandma,
heart.
hollows her out, and puts her flesh on.
That's something you would do, man.
It's the original story.
I know, but it's like, well, you could do like that, like the movie Scanner Darkly, where he's like wearing the suit that's like
Yeah.
suit, whatever.
I mean, I do it,
Yes.
but I do it in like a different way, not so literal.
More
But-
like Total Recall.
Maybe. I can't say.
Not Silence of the Lambs.
He don't want to spoil it. He don't want a woman suit it. Don't want to like dancing in the mirror to Q Lazarus. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's Seinen. It's Seinen Seinen, which is like teen, young,
yes, that's what
adult. Which has that look, that kind of that more. It isn't like the big eyes and all that, kind of the more. It's better to fight like Akira, more like Akira kind of stuff, like that kind of deal.
Sure.
But yeah, like that, like taking those ideas and from past fiction and weaving them into a new story works better as a beginning, middle, and end, volume one, with one single story within that. Like you can expand on it like you're doing volume two, which I'm not a fan of when they do books books that I want an ending to my book. If I'm reading a graphic novel, I want to be completely satisfying, but leave me wanting more without leaving like.
Was that one of the reasons you were so happy with Arkham?
Yes, it left me wanting more, but it didn't give me a bullshit cliffhanger.
Well, each Casefile Arkham is a complete story arc, so I mean they all interlocked, but you're not going to be left hanging.
Well, see, and that right there, that is the biggest problem I have with books in general, is that they will leave you hanging. It's like they pull the bullshit TV season thing. It's like, well, we got to end it on a cliffhanger. Can make sure you come back and watch it, and like make sure the network renews it, or they'll have pissed off fans. And it's like, it's cheap. It's really cheap. I'd rather live each graphic novel as it's your last.
Actually, I had to learn that the hard way, Larry. The last book I did with a publisher, which was again Archaea, which later became Boom, was going to be a 3-part war epic. As I said, fighter pilots in a near future setting that's a bit Blade Runner-ish. And it just killed me when someone else bought the company And they said, okay, well, we're not renewing all of these books. We just bought the company. Yeah, Boom bought it, and that was the end of it.
And licensed, like every book is from them is pretty much licensed. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Well, then it took forever to get the rights back.
so that's what's so crazy about this. That's why, like, I understand when people don't want to deal with, like, I'm of two minds. It's like where part of me is like, hey, that's great. You know, you have a better distribution deal. That's what you want. But most of the time, it's like you have the likelihood of somebody screwing you over. You know, like you said, it's a publisher screwing you over. You know, this isn't a lot of them aren't Image deals where you just, you know, and even then, I'm pretty sure you can get screwed over by Image as well. Like there's certain things like international stuff as well. But, you know, there's a lot of that. Nobody talks about that stuff. They really don't because, you know, they keep it under wraps. They don't say how much they get paid. So you don't know if you're getting screwed over, you're getting paid well, or you're not getting paid well, what the page rates should be. Nobody likes to talk about that stuff. It's like, oh, it's impolite to talk about how much you get paid. But if you don't, and so if something happens, like, oh, you got ripped off. Well, how am I supposed to know?
Actually, one thing I've done always, and you know, when I was on the convention circuit, if anyone asked, I was always willing to tell them what a reasonable rate is, because yeah, I would see that across the board. Poor kids who had just got their foot in the door, or think, oh yeah, finally I'm in, not realizing that they're just being used as you know, sweatshop labor to be tossed aside once they're done. Because if you're willing to work for that low price once, they'll never raise your rate.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have a lot of that. You have that issue now, where a lot of people are told, well, you have to, you know, you have to go in free. You know, you have to, you know,
no bullshit. Never work for free. Never.
Work for free.
Never.
I was watching this interview with Chris Claremont from like 91. It was like one of those Interview with the Greats is one of those bullshit Stan Lee VHS series. And it was interview, and it's like, a guy that can actually write, and a guy who's just a good marketer, and that's it. Stan Lee hasn't had has never had a creative bone in his body unless Jack Kirby fucked him up the ass. That was.
I love that line.
I love it. It's great. It's brutal. And I'd talk about this now if he's alive or dead. It doesn't matter because, you know, he's fucked up. He is one of those. He is a corporate. He is the epitome of the corporate dickhead who's fucked over people. You know that. And he gets.
And he stole my seat.
What?
He did on a flight or something.
No, at a San Diego Comic-Con party.
The fuck? Well, it was an actual seat, or did they move the chair out of the way to wheel him up in his wheelchair?
Actual chair.
We'll talk about it later. I want you to finish what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, but it's like, you know, as I'm saying, like, it's that you have like somebody, Chris Claremont, like, oh yeah, I was, you know, internships and all. He like, oh, I work for free. It's like for every case where that works out, there are hundreds of people that get fucked. And that's just the way it is. So it's like how much you value yourself, and that idea, that corporate mindset. Also, it's what do you want to get out of it? Do you want to be your own boss? Do you want to make comics and do your thing? And then like it's the independent mindset or it's the corporate mindset. And if you don't, you have one or the other. What is your goal? Is your goal to make your own comics and produce your own works and be basically a small business? Like Josh, you and Kat are small business, right? That's equivalent. That's what you are. It's like a mom and pop deal, you know?
Yeah.
You're not Walmart. You don't want to be Walmart. You just want to produce. You're the local fucking hardware store selling your hammers and nails and shit like that, you know? You don't want to be the big, like that right there. The bigger you are, the bigger problems can be.
Yeah,
but if you want to be a corporate shill, yeah, you got to eat shit. That's the first thing you do. You got to work for free. You got to eat shit. You got to do grunt work. You got to humiliate yourself.
The thing is we founded 01 Publishing because, you know, we were getting shafted by other publishers, treated like shit, and yeah, my personal feeling was...
And all our friends were being treated like shit and getting shafted.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, look, if I'm going to be busting my ass, you know, trying to create my my story, damn it, I'm going to do it for myself. I'm going to be beholden to no one. I'm not going to be trying to keep anybody happy because, again, you know, keeping to that, you know, must fit into a floppy thing was bullshit. Keeping to a, well, you know, you're limited to X many pages is bullshit. You know, I'm going to bust my ass for myself. And it's a hell of a lot more satisfying. And as such, I can publish books that don't are not beholden to SJWs, are not beholden to keeping agendas, and a lot of the books that we publish break a lot of barriers, if I do say so myself, and quite frankly scare a bunch of people, which is wonderful, because if I can make you think, then I'm doing my job, as far as me as the owner of the company feels. So that's me.
They're disgusting, and I love it. I love that they're disgusting. That's a compliment, I'd say. You don't have there's too many books, or you're like, yeah, look how extreme we are, man. Like the bullshit Avatar Press books, all those the Garth. I like Garth Ennis at times. It's like
take it in small doses.
It's like because a lot of it's just he was born to write war comics. Johann's Tiger, with art by Chris Weston, about a German tiger tank crew in World War II.
Oh yeah.
Holy fuck, that's one of the best comics of all time. And
it's war stories were great.
Yes. Oh, the one with David Lloyd about the ships getting strafed by the Luftwaffe.
Yeah.
It's basically it's a horror story, but instead of the monsters, the Luftwaffe, because they're coming out of the night sky. These are just basically ships without I don't even think they had radar. So it's you have to hear. By the time you hear that, you're getting strafed with 30mm fire and everything. It's brutal. It's fascinating to see that stuff.
The Night Witches.
Oh god, Night Witches, and what was the other one? Oh shit. What was damn it. There's so many good ones. Every single one of them is good. But Braylon Mega Gears mentions Jim Starlin is a prime example of someone that got screwed over big time in recent history. Yes, guy who created pretty much everything notable for the Marvel movies gets fucked on royalties as well as the book he was going to do. So it's why
it was no good, right? Like he was saying, oh, this story's.
Well, they were going to do 3 volumes, 2 graphic novels about Thanos, because he created Thanos and everything. Yeah. But they already had a series in production, an ongoing series. That's the one Don and Kate, who actually wrote God Country. It's an amazing miniseries. The Image put it out. It's about a guy dealing with his father who has Alzheimer's, and a god sword falls from the sky and cures his Alzheimer's, and he's got to battle space gods and stuff. It's really good. It's a very heartfelt story, but best way to describe it is it feels like a Clint Eastwood movie, but with Clint Eastwood, heartfelt Clint Eastwood movie meets. It's like Gran Torino meets Masters of the Universe. It's in a good way.
I need to read this then.
It's you can find it on Amazon. It's a good fucking book. It's all it is. It's a 6-issue miniseries. It's one complete story. But
actually, when you're done, I do need to cut in, but keep going.
But that kind of stuff, getting fucked over that. But it happens. That's what you get for working in the corporate sphere, and that's just going to happen.
Well, no, I'll actually say I have zero experience with Marvel, so I cannot say. In all fairness, the brief time that we worked with DC, they treated us wonderful. They paid on time. They paid great. Other than the talent we were working with, who was insane, corporate and our editor were incredible people. Now, they don't work there anymore, so who knows? Maybe current DC is horrible. Maybe they're great. I don't know. But I can honestly say, when we were working under Mike Martz, dream job. He was wonderful. So I got to give credit where credit is due. On top of that, you were saying, what do you charge? What's page rates? And nobody will tell you. And that is really frustrating.
Yeah, no, you got to look in old back message boards to find out people's opinion of what you should get paid. It's
so I'll say right now, for everyone listening, if you're working with small press, indie, Kickstarter, someone complete unknowns, you're just getting your foot in the door, $75 a page is the lowest you should go. Do not ever go any lower. And that's just for maybe pencils and inks, not the full everything, but $75 per page. Typically, you want to shoot for at least $110 per page. When you start getting to the bigger companies, mid-tier, you want anything from $125 to $150. Once you get to the big two, I forget, what did we get paid for that?
I don't remember.
Was it 300 and something per page? But we did everything.
Yeah.
We did colors, we did inks, we did.
Yeah, so we were being paid for being penciler, inker, and colorist.
So it was 350. It was good money, but so does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot because that right there, that's a very informative thing because you're saying like, basic art, just like say pencils and maybe pencils inks like 250 roughly per page from corporate from Marvel DC.
Yeah.
But well, hell, if the announcement's coming out soon about Amazon, if that's to be true, or Amazon's gonna be doing their own kind of publishing thing, where it's like you create IP that Amazon can use in their original movies or TV shows or whatever, or publish. Which, hey, if the pays well and people want to do it, that's fine. But it's not creator-owned work, and it's probably not going to be the most,
Well, that's another thing I'll bring up. If you're ever getting a deal, okay, with a publisher, never give up more than 50% of your rights for ancillary products, movies, TV, any of that. You get a lot of publishers, and I won't name any names, but you get a lot of publishers out there who will like, oh, you get to keep everything, but we get the movie rights. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And often those publishers will get very creative and say, oh, well, you haven't made back the money yet that it cost to print the book, so we don't have to pay you. Oh, I know your movie just made millions of dollars, but that's ours.
That's where to get you. See, honestly, and also when people, I've seen it happen in the past. Like, I was reading about this that for the longest time, Frank Cho's book, Liberty Meadows, the book he was doing in college, the comic strip that he put out through Image and everything. Beautiful comic. I mean, it's
yeah.
It's funny animals, beautiful women, monsters, homages to the like Flash Gordon movie serials, King Kong, all that stuff. I love it. Well, it got what do you call it? What do you call it when the options? It got optioned by some producer, some company. While it was optioned because of the whole deal, they couldn't publish any more Liberty Meadows for like a couple years. Right. Because of the option, because like the whole multimedia thing, it wasn't just.
That's another thing that you actually can argue for. Do not accept that. We went through that again with Titanium Rain, which was optioned, and I'm saying this because I want every person out there to know this stuff so they don't get screwed, because it is vicious. We didn't get screwed, but it was a fight. My God, was it a fight. We had a publisher. Well, no, but can we say? Is it okay to say, Kat? I mean, they don't exist anymore. Boom bought them.
Oh, they don't exist anymore, and the people in charge aren't there anymore. So yeah.
It was the people running Arcade at the time tried to sell the movie rights out from under us that they didn't even have the movie rights, and they sold them, which was terrible.
No, they didn't actually sell them.
They tried to.
They tried to.
Same thing happened with Utopiates, interestingly enough.
Wow.
But
that wasn't even in the contract, though, right? Like, was that in the contract that they could?
No, we owned everything. It was a license to the company.
They were acting as if they owned it, but with Titanium Rain, it was caught before it was sold. With Utopiates, we found out that they sold the rights when the new publisher started putting out ads for our book.
The fuck? The balls on these people. It's like they're not get caught.
So here's some things. Never ever give up more than 50% of your film rights or any of your ancillary rights. Second, when they say the whole multimedia deal, if they really want to option your book, you don't have to give that up. You really don't. Your publisher might say, oh, but they really want it because they want to make Hollywood happy. If Hollywood really wants it, they won't do that to you. Another thing they might claim is, oh, well, you're going to have to let us take care of the property and we're going to start writing our own graphic novels. Bullshit. You do not have to accept that. Also, another one is they'll make the claim, well, if you take a little less money, we'll let you help out. You'll have script oversight and you can come on the set. That is complete lie. It's meaningless.
Basically, the number one rule is fuck you, pay me.
It just any promise they make, just get the maximum amount of money you can and step away. Don't have any illusions that you're going to become a filmmaker or that they're going to be your friends.
That they're doing you a favor because they're not.
Anytime, and in fact, what I often found, and this was just disgusting, was during the negotiations, I was like crazy agreeable to what they wanted as long as I kept my rights and I got paid. And I kept repeatedly saying, look, I'm a writer. I want to write. I have no interest in making films. I don't care about getting on the set. You don't need script approval from me. You're going to go do your thing regardless. Just pay me and you can make your movie. And they really, it was weird that they weren't comfortable with that. And it wasn't until I actually complained about something that they seemed to be happy. And that was because they had gotten someone who really had no business writing the script. I said, that's who you're picking? I mean, that is not a sci-fi screenwriter. What are you doing? They were happy.
From the writer of Bridges of Madison County.
Or they told me the script, and I said, well, that's stupid. And they were happy.
Yeah.
Wow. From
so
Deuce
weird.
Bigelow. Right.
That's a big bitch.
I was the guy who had written the Hawaii 5-0 script that never got made.
Oh, God. Oh,
Yeah.
no. At least I said TJ Hooker. Maybe be a winner.
That's true.
Kind of like those two guys that got to direct Solo who screwed it up. It's like, why did you get them?
Oh, Lord and Miller, the guys who did the Lego movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, why would you make Solo? Why?
Well,
Why not Del Toro or, you know?
Well, actually, why do it at all? That's a big thing.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest. If they had let Tarantino do it, I would be there in a heartbeat.
But it'd have a chewy foot fetish. You know that. He's a deviant. He couldn't help it. I can't watch his movies. The only one I can watch without having that in my head is Reservoir Dogs. Because
That's my favorite.
You know, even though it's a ripoff, he ripped off a Hong Kong movie. Nobody's like, no one's gonna notice. It's like, it's so bad, it's so blatant. But that's Tarantino for you. But his best movie is like one he never directed, and that was.
We actually have a Hong Kong movie. Was it City on Fire? In our DVD stack, awaiting viewing. We haven't seen it yet.
No, not yet. But what was the one that we did watch? The
Killer.
The Killer. That was amazing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
The Killer, A Better Tomorrow 1 and 2. Hard-Boiled, of course, but I just love that stuff. Yeah. Amazing, amazing stuff. John Woo in Hong Kong. It's a great combination. John Woo in America. I love Broken Arrow. Don't get me wrong. I love Broken Arrow. It's bad. It's a bad film. But
hard target, Larry. I mean,
why hasn't someone mixed Hong Kong action with Cyberpunk?
That's what makes maybe because it's money. Because I know a lot of that stuff. It's just like it's gasoline explosions and wire work and doves are cheap, but background plates and like special effects.
Guys in suits with sunglasses, two-handing guns all over the place.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be great. Like a guy wakes up, he thought he died in an accident. Turns out, he's a machine now. Is his brain in a robotic body? I mean, this stuff writes itself. And he's there to find his daughter who's been kidnapped by this drug lord who's going to, like all this stuff. Like it's like basically a video game plot, except guns and explosions and, neon. And he's like riding a motorcycle and he flips the motorcycle into the car, shoots the gas tank, explodes in the car. Like, goes to the back window. It's like, oh God, I love it. Now I want to see this. It doesn't exist.
I know we've brought this up, but
Neon Trash.
There you go.
Have you seen Yakuza Apocalypse?
I have not.
Nope.
It's that film. Oh my God.
Takashi Miike.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Okay.
Oh dear
Cool.
Lord. I've seen some of his films. I've not seen Visitor Q. I've seen.
It's one of his more gonzo bizarre films.
Is it any more gonzo than Visitor Q or Gozu? Is it any more? It's
about a good Yakuza Godfather type who dies, and he passes on his inheritance, his role, by accident to a low-level nobody in the clan. And it turns out why he's been in charge for so long is he's a vampire.
Yeah.
Not a Western vampire. He's an Eastern vampire.
And the guy ends up turning the whole town into vampires.
And they hop everywhere.
But, I mean, yeah, so you've got these awesome, these awesome Yakuza vampires. You have assassins that wear frog mascot outfits. Kicking major ass.
The most terrifying assassin in the world wears a frog mascot suit.
I knew yes, you'd mentioned this before. Now it's all coming back. I'd seen this somewhere before, Josh. I'd seen this somewhere before. But yes,
are you thinking of the Pepe trailer?
Yes,
yeah, I used the footage.
Shadowy City.
Yeah, I'm looking at some pics right now, and it's is this the guy from The Raid?
Yes.
He plays Mad Dog. Yeah, this guy's cool. And I see this frog doing a kick on him too. His outfit.
See, stuff like that's fun. Like I like stuff like that, and I really wish that could be. A lot of people would use that influence in their comics and everything, but a lot of people when they're doing these books, it's like, Kat, I know you edit a lot. I know that's kind of one of your deals. I mean, you're not only an artist, you're all this stuff, but you're an editor. And I've said this before. Like, if I was going to get an editor, I'd seek you out first and foremost if you were available, because you call me out on my bullshit and you'd clarify that certain stuff. But you see a lot of books, they do stuff and it's this. They have no direction. It's like they want to go like 500 different places, but they have no. I want to do this, but with this. Oh, this is it's a war story, but it's also this.
But you know who has tight stories? That Josh Finney guy.
Now,
Here's
what
the
you're
real
saying,
problem.
that is very true. And the kill the babies rule, a lot of people have gotten pissed off at me when I've told them to do that. Or pick one baby and stick with it.
Sophie's choice, damn it. Cat's choice. Well, it's like it rubs me the wrong way when people are the tone is really off. Like, I mean, if that at the end of the day, that's your book, but you're going to limit your audience by doing so. It's like you want to do a kind of tongue-in-cheek story, but have a serious, let's tackle serious topics. I'm like, I don't buy entertainment to tackle that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like a lot of, you're not, like, you could say, if you really want to dig into it, that Casefile Arkham deals with PTSD and the post-war, dealing with people coming back, from seeing horrific things and then adjusting. You could say that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it's such a damn good, well-written comic.
Well, the thing is, God, I'm trying to remember who interviewed me. It was Deadman. Deadman had asked me if I insert politics into my comics, and I said generally no. I find that that's distracting, and I feel that ultimately what it is I insert principles and morals that are universal, that everyone can relate to, into the story, and let that be the guide.
Right. Like freedom.
Yes, exactly. Or, right and wrong, or feeling guilt about killing someone, or, when the right choice isn't clear, or when there is no right choice. That's what makes it interesting. You're dealing with loss, dealing with, what is it? What would be Romeo and Juliet, forbidden love. Yeah, these are all the universal things that everyone can relate to, regardless of what your politics are.
And that really shouldn't matter, because as long as it's well written, that's all that matters right there. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of things that people forget. When they write in their stories, it's like whether there are things when you try, like, you write the story how it should be. Like, I'm never going to put politics in my book. Like the being like so. Like, having that mindset, you're unintentionally going to probably slip something in there. It's like the harder you try. It's like those people that are like, they're so anti-gay.
You're not even aware of it half the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a lot of it's like the really anti-gay folks, like those people at the fire and brimstones. All the homosexuals are going to burn in the fires, and they're found in the a airport restroom tapping on the floor, that kind of stuff. It happens. Like, oh,
You ever read Ender's Game?
well, there was
Yeah, exactly.
My God, that book's gay.
yeah. There's a lot. Like, the movie is too. It's like, but stuff like that. It's like that's what's so funny. It's like the harder you try to, like get away from something, it's it is a Chinese finger trap of logic. The harder you pull to try to, it's the tighter it gets, and that's the problem. That's what she said. But no, it's this. But we're dealing with these kind of stories. I don't think, unless it changes all of a sudden, which would be weird. I don't think Casefile Arkham, and I'm pretty sure Red won't do this as well. Like this whole slap you in the face with like real world issues and talking about tough subjects. I don't want that shit in my entertainment. The world is. I'm not gonna pay. I don't want to be paid $20 to be lectured to, or if there's a small bit of it, that's fine.
Larry, I wouldn't publish something like that.
Well, thank you.
Daniel, sorry, I interrupted you, Daniel.
Oh, I was just gonna say that as long as it's like entertaining, I mean, you could have some, allusion to some socio-political thing if it's organic to the storyline.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's
organic.
Storytelling.
Yeah. It's no need to be like, I don't know, a freak. Like when you said with the fire and the brimstone, I know people online are like, no politics ever. And it's just like, well, I mean, if it's organic, it's story.
Well, I think what people online mean by that, and I think they themselves are not the most eloquent, don't quite have the literary vocabulary to quite express what they mean.
Okay.
I don't think they mean no politics literally. What they're confusing is the difference between a story with politics in it and propaganda.
Yeah. Well, it's like, would you consider the Golden Age Captain America books propaganda, though? I consider it propaganda.
Oh, well, it was written for that purpose.
Yeah, it's like...
I mean, there was no argument. They were pretty open about why they wrote it.
His name's Captain America.
Exactly. Well, the punching Hitler...
propaganda.
Yeah, punching Hitler just before Pearl Harbor, just before we got into the war. And, it'd be like if in...
Well, there were some pretty obvious reasons why Kirby and Stan Lee wanted to do us in the war.
Exactly, but I'm saying, like, it would be...
You notice Captain America wasn't punching any Japanese or Italians on that cover.
Yeah, true. That's very true. You didn't have somebody getting like, I'm slapping Mussolini or something along those lines. Which would be funny. I mean,
Captain America to punch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a modern day equivalent would have been like Captain America in a comic from like July of 2000. Hunting down Osama bin Laden. Like how
he should have been though.
That would have been fun because honestly, we knew about Osama bin Laden because the CIA armed him and trained and this and that. Also, the deals with the Saudi royal family, his construction company, and all this and that, and like the brave fighters, the Mujahideen. Thank you, Rambo 3. It's like, oh my god, I thought that was a joke for the longest time because I hadn't seen like Rambo 3 in full, and I actually watched. Oh no! Oh no! It's like Rambo was supporting terror. Like that's what Rambo 4 should have been about. They should have just like John Rambo was locked up in Guantanamo Bay because he helped the Mujahideen once. He's considered a terrorist. He's just like, you ain't getting out of this, John.
You have great ideas, Larry. That would be awesome.
I would pay to see a reboot of Rambo where that happened.
I was doing what my country told me to. I was ordered to do it.
And then they're gonna silence him because he's saying that. It's like, oh shit, he's talking the truth. We don't need him to do that. It's so hilarious to see that stuff happen. It's like, and you could do that, and like people would, that's keep politics out of comics and this and that. I'm like, you can do it without being overtly preachy. Like you could bust people's balls. Busting balls is fine.
Yeah, satire is fine.
Exactly, but like when you're doing like, be a part of the problem, not part. Be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. No, it should be a part of the problem. We don't want solutions here. We can't make money off of solutions. We need to perpetuate.
Or if there's a
Sorry.
balance of like if a character is an activist, you can have a character that's like, oh, this guy's crazy. You know, like show like different perspectives.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
To have,
Well,
like,
since we're going down this path, I mean, the most overtly political book I wrote, which a lot of people might assume it's World War Kaiju, which it isn't. I actually felt that was just more of a historical parody more than anything, or satire. It wasn't really political. The most political book I wrote was Titanium Rain, the cyberpunk fighter pilot story.
Mhm.
And the reason the first initial inspiration for the story, let me tell you, my dream is to finish that story. I want an artist who can actually give it the credit, give it the treatment it needed, because I was not up to the task. I am sorry. The story is about a civil war in China, and the world gets drawn into it. And the initial reasons I told it was one, I was deeply inspired by the Standalone Complex series. I wanted to tell something on that kind of vibe, that same mindset. But also because there was so much anti-war sentiment going on during the Second Gulf War. And all this rhetoric about war is never the answer. And so I wanted to tell a story which asked the question, well, what about when war is the answer? What then? And that was kind of the undercurrent of the story. And I had all sides represented. Nobody was necessarily right. I had the kind of God and Guns Texan in it. And he was not shown to be a moron. He just had his opinion. I had a far left terrorist group that was conspiring with the enemy because they felt that they wanted to put an end to the war, and they thought the fastest track to ending it was having the Chinese win. I mean, and what I really wanted to do was, again, one, ask that question, well, what if war is the only answer? Then what do we do? But also let the reader decide at the end of the day. And it was interesting, everyone brought to it their own interpretation. A lot of people thought it was an anti-war book. Other people thought it was jingoistic propaganda, but that was for them to interpret.
And conspiracy theorists stalked you about chemtrails.
Oh yeah, that was bad.
oh no, that's not fun.
Hey, that fucker got my phone number, my email. That was creepy.
Who needs CIA when you have those people, right?
He's gonna red pill you on some jet stream.
Oh dear God, cloud seeding. They're doing it. They're making the frogs gay. But Daniel, like earlier, you're kind of pitching like the background of Red. It reminded me of, though I've never played the first game because I don't have a PC that could do it. But Deus Ex. The first Deus Ex game, which a lot of conspiracy stuff. There's a engineered bio weapon attack and that kind of stuff. It's like, but that right there, like that aspect, like you're in a way you are being political, but it's not being like in a way. I guess it could be considered preachy, but it's not, and propaganda like, but it's so fringe and so.
Well, if you played any of the Deus Ex games, the endings are always ambiguous whether you've made the right choice.
Yeah, except for the last one, which really doesn't have much of an ending to it, which was disappointing. I enjoyed the game a lot, but
I haven't played it yet. I've been waiting.
It's a prequel to the first Deus Ex game. Like there's certain stuff in there. Like,
no. I played. Was it Human Revolution?
Yeah, Human Revolution's amazing. Yeah, they
the one after that. Or was that?
Mankind Divided. That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one I haven't played yet.
I haven't played it either. Yeah, I haven't played it. You good?
It's good, but the ending might just, there's like I said, really is no ending to it. Like if we consider it as full or not, but it's like mainly it's about it's one of those. It's not about the ending; it's about the journey kind of thing. It's like
it's supposed to be a 3-part game.
Yeah, but it's like it's solid though. It takes for a game that takes place entirely in like Prague. Mm-hmm. And there's certain stuff in there. Like I really messed up something. I was like, well, I'll go back and save it. Screw it. I'll stick with it. And I'll live with my consequences. because I was like, I could play non-lethal. I was like, oh, screw that, blades through the chest.
Well, another one that does a great job of that would be Nier Automata.
Yes, I heard about that one. I don't have a PS4.
That is a triumph in video game storytelling. It is such a unique experience. And yeah, somebody had said to play this game, you better prepare yourself for heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some gut-wrenching moments in that game. Actually, I haven't had a game affect me emotionally that much since Saints Row 2.
Well, this was worse. I mean, like, gosh, skip this scene for me.
But like stuff like that, I mean, like, there's nothing emotional impact. It's hard to be emotionally invested in a single issue, but you can be emotionally invested. Like I found myself emotionally invested within Casefile Arkham, especially Volume 2, Volume 1 as well, but Volume 2, and it's mainly the character interactions and stuff, and like building, with Glinda and everything, and building that, that romance and that kind of like there's such a dread within that universe. Of course, I mean, considering Lovecraftian mythos and everything, but there's such a that dread. You don't want nothing bad to happen. You feel like it could at any moment,
right?
And it's like that, and that having even at that slight sense, like you can shock somebody, do the snap, but that's building an atmosphere is more to me more important than a shock or a gore moment. You know what I'm saying?
Let me just give you a little bit of, I guess, writing craft theory. One of the often asked questions of me is, well, how do you make a comic scary? Or how do you, emotionally affect someone in a comic? But scary is usually the question. And usually it's then paired up with, well, in this day and age, you see movies and, we've seen the alien and we've seen the world get destroyed. And, there's such spectacle. I mean, how can you top that? And you say, you don't. You don't top that. And in fact, a lot of those things miss the point. The most important thing is to build real characters that you care about, characters that you relate to, characters that you want to see continue and do well, and risk taking that away or take that away. That is far more effective than Superman destroying all of Metropolis to save it.
Yeah. And then right there, actually making a character moment and actually having stake and making you want nothing bad to happen to this character, and you're worrying about that right there. It's a fictional character. This is not real, but reading it or watching it, taking it in, like taking it in whatever format as far as entertainment goes.
Let me ask you: did you see the Firefly film?
Yes, Serenity. Yes, yeah,
I saw it too. Yeah.
Okay. We've seen so many movies now that have tried to affect us, which is a massive destruction, right? And it just falls flat. But how many of us were completely surprised and affected at the ending with who dies?
Yeah. Well, also in the middle part too, and in the middle as well, like to get to Miranda and everything, what they had to do, and the horrifying, like that to me was, it like the what happens near the end. That was like, oh god, that was.
I don't want to ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but
yeah, but what happens in the middle
character
as well?
Die, nobody's safe.
Yeah,
anybody could die.
It was just to see that happen, and we should know, Whedon, he likes to kill people. It's like he's kind of twisted that way, in that regard. It's like, the Buffy, perfect, Buffy Angel, all that stuff. But when you see, that's a good way of doing it. But when you actually have, I'm going to kill half the universe because it's overpopulated. I'm like, that makes no sense. That's stupid. That's why I'm not going. And also, I don't really watch Marvel movies. I watched Deadpool 2, and they say, well, that's a Marvel movie too. But it's like the stakes were more personal. For saying that for a comic book film in this day and age, there's more personal stakes, which is crazy. It's Deadpool 2 is an intimate film, if you want to, in the grand cosmic scheme of things. As far as these comic book movies go, it's an intimate film. There's certain stuff in there I'm like, I know this is rated R. I know they can get away with a lot, but I'm surprised they actually did that, because I was pleasantly surprised. But there are so many times, whether it be, especially in comics, where they don't, like, the grander it is, like, yeah, you can do anything. Like, that's the thing about comics. It's limited by your artistic skill and your imagination, also time, but it's not limited by budget. So going in and putting that in there, putting that effort in to draw this amazing world, if the stakes are not real, if they're not grounded, oh, if you don't do this, I'm gonna destroy alien planet X. Okay, I'd have no stake for that. I have no, like if you show me, say, 6 to 12 pages of like a family's everyday life on this alien planet, like a kid comes home from, picking these fruit for the mother, and the mother is having a rough day and sees her kid bringing the fruit to the mother, and it cheers the mother up, and they both enjoy that, and like you kind of get to know these people, and like, one of the neighbors comes home, he was hurt in a mining accident or something. Like, basically, I'm just making it up as I go. You actually kind of understand these people, you kind of care about these people, and then you introduce the threat. And then, like, if you don't,
Well,
these unknown people, it's like, do you care about these people? Because even though they're not your kind of people, do you want them to die? It's like, no, I don't want that to happen. I'd like to know
what
more about
shocked
these
you
people.
more? What hurt more? Alderaan getting utterly vaporized and billions dying, or Obi-Wan getting cut down?
Obi-Wan, yeah, right there. That's it's a story shorthand for, oh, these are really bad people. And it's like, and I get it. I get why they did that, but it's like Alderaan meant nothing. The Obi-Wan's reaction to Alderaan meant more. The voices, millions of voices cried out, and then nothing. That stuff. It's great. It works fine. But when you don't have this, when the stakes are not on a personal level, it's like it doesn't, like that right there. That's that good proper storytelling, and that is a key thing.
I break it down to simply give me a reason to give a shit.
Yeah. Good way of putting it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comic previews where it's like, I don't even know what this book's about. Like, I've encountered that lately. Like, I've looked at the roster of, like, I won't name the companies, but I look at the comic and the description, and it's just like, I just can't tell. Is there a person in this comic book? I see a lot of world building. I see a lot of description.
Oh God! You touched upon something. You just triggered me, Daniel. You just triggered me. The world building bullshit. I'm so tired of this. The first issue should not be all about world building. Perfect example. Bill Mantlo, before he had that unfortunate accident where he was hit by that car and became like comatose and like had brain damage, he took a who gives a shit action figure, Rom, Space Knight, Rom, Space Knight of Galador, who fights the dire race, and Rom was a hunk of junk. It was a piece of plastic that barely moved, had a little laser thing. It was like the dorkiest design ever. The first issue opens up him landing in West Virginia, crash landing, and like, just, what the hell's going on? I got to fight dire race, and just it explains everything on the fly. Action happens in the first issue. He meets Brandy, eventually becomes his love interest, and they go about battling the dire race. And the first issue just kicks ass. It tells you, and as it goes along, they meter out or put bits and pieces of the world building, and then there's like a chunk between the run. It's like 75 issues plus an annual. They did backup stories like this. The main story would actually, they shorten the pages like 16 pages, and they did 4 to 6 page backups. So like many years ago on Galador and that kind of stuff. Like they had a guy named he was named the Terminator, and he was like a robot in all black, and predated the Terminator movie. So. And he was going around, they kill these dire race. And then you find out the horrific aspects of being a space knight. It's like you gave up your body and your consciousness, and like basically most of your body is left in like a drawer in like a morgue. But like your central nervous system has been placed inside this robotic body. You don't sleep. The guy has not slept in 200 years. Like, I'm just imagine how the mechanical body, and he's like, he doesn't even have fingers. They're like gloves. They're like he's like Pillsbury Doughboy hands. It's like these kind of like oven mitt kind of gloves, and he can't really feel like. But deep down he is a man. It's kind of RoboCop like. It's tragic. The dude's a tragic hero, but it's like his goal was to wipe out the dire wraiths. And he's debating on killing a child who's a dire wraith, to kill a kid. It's really like, he's like, that's the enemy, but it's a kid. It has ability to become good. what do I do? And then the X-Men show up and there's stuff like that. It's like, whatever. But that is how you do a story. You don't, this is the world. These are some of the supporting characters. Oh, and the end of the issue, here's the main hero or whatever. And like, no, throw me into the action. Hit it off the bat. Don't pull this, and it works, and that works right there for, whether it be floppies or mainly floppies and graphic novels. It doesn't matter. Don't dick around. You only got so many pages to work with.
Oh yeah.
I don't care if I'm not care about the character, I'm not going to care about the world.
One of the interesting things that working with Patrick on Casefile Arkham, because that was the first project that he and I did together, where he was like deeply invested in the project. The first job he did with me, it was more of a work for hire, just kind of for fun. So he really wasn't all that aware of how I worked in the process of how I developed my settings and my worlds. And one thing that blew him away was on book 2, and this came out in the interviews, and he was kind of shocked to hear this, was people were asking, well, you had all this stuff in book 2. I mean, was that planned? Or, I mean, how did that come about? And I had said, well, doing book 2 is a lot easier because I knew all of this going into it. Even though I never knew if there would be a book 2, I never knew if you'd get any more of Hank's story or Glinda's story or what happened in the war, or why there's that weird thing that happened in the room when Hank's getting interrogated by the fishmen, right?
Yeah.
I had said I needed to know why all these things were happening. I needed to know why all these people were the way they were. I had to know why Glinda had the abilities she did, why she looked the way she did, why Hank was having these nightmares. I needed to have this. And so huge sections of my world were already developed. And it was essentially, well, what ends up getting used and told? And so you can have world building organically done and it not stick out like, and now time for exposition.
Right. It's like for you to be a better, to tell the story better, that's what you did, like, in terms of like research.
Oh, and tons of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm right there, that research and everything, and also building the organic world and making it feel natural and not forced. It's like, oh, you need to know this so you can know this later on down the line. If you can't do that naturally, to me, it takes me out of the story. If you're trying to
the two ancillary characters. I mean, it's given. It's a kind of a given that your main character, you should have a pretty strong sense of where he's been, where he's going, where he'll end. You should probably have a very firm idea, even if you're only going to tell one story. You should have a vague sense of those things anyway. But the two ancillary characters that have full backgrounds that weren't even explored in the first book and in the second book only begin to get touched upon is the police detective Sinclair and Glinda. Both of them, I had to know exactly why they acted the way they did, what their pasts were, where their futures lie, before I even wrote the book. And that was incredibly... it's a technique I always use, but it's a little time consuming, but trust me, it's worth it.
Yeah, that right there, actually having, like, what they do with TV shows, the story Bible, having that, even if nobody ever sees it, only you know about it, but having that thing to touch base with. It's like there's, when I'm doing my characters, if I have an idea, like maybe it's a bit of dialogue, maybe it's a little something in the past that happened to them, but I'll never touch upon in a story, but it affects me, how I write that character, or it's like, there's certain aspects, like I have, I don't flesh it out 100% because I like to stay a little bit loose. I stay a little bit, improv. I can improv pretty well. I can improv a fucking amazing story if I wanted to right now. I'm good at that. I'm good at working solo. I don't like having to rely on other people. I've never been a team player. I never, I would have been called another lone wolf attack. It's like that kind of thing. It's like I'd never, like art projects, I'd request to work alone. I hate working with groups because it's like I have my vision. I want to do what I see in my head, and then having I don't know about that. It's the wishy washy people they want to do this and wanting to do that, and then change their mind. I'm like, screw this. I'm doing my own thing. If you don't like it, tough. And
So,
I couldn't do it.
sorry. So, Daniel, how'd you come about getting to know your character then?
Probably similar to how you did. Like, I just detailed backstory of each character that would take place. I have there's a three for the 3 volumes. I have like the story plotted out. I usually start with just the basic. First I draw the character because which is interesting because I'm an artist, so I like to see what it looks like first, and then I sort of look at the character and think like what try to imagine who this person is. Just the way I like characters is like if they can have natural conflict with each other, then it's just ripe for storylines. You just put the 2 characters together and have them talk to each other and have them disagree. And like for instance, I have like Red. She's sort of like she's the main character. She's probably plays it straight. And then I have her ex-boyfriend who was like kind of like in her like a Chad kind of like guy, like he's a great quarterback in high school and great guy, but then his mom died under mysterious conspiratorial circumstances, left, sort of became like this journalist guy motivated by like the death of his mom, the mysterious death of his mom. So like when he comes back, he tries to be this like how she was before, just so she can trust him and know who he is, but he's changed. So I know his whole backstory of what happened when he left the country and like who he hooked up with and how he became an activist and got into hacktivism and all this stuff. But he's changed. And, I get into it in the first volume, but there's things in the other volume that will explain that more. So it's like, can you trust him? He sounds noble, but is he? But it's I don't feel a need to like give up on my game like right away. But so I do like detailed backstories. It's funny. I was reading an article with Michael Mann, and he wrote elaborate backstories for his screenplays. Like with Heat, he had a whole thing with Robert De Niro's character. Like he went to prison and he studied like Marxism, and he used it as like an excuse for his criminal activities, like a psychological reason, and he based it on a few people and slammed it together. But when you watch the movie, it's sort of like, you don't really see it, but you see it in the performance because he had the characters like act it, live it, So any little bit you can do to create character like that will help the integrity of the story somehow. Like that's how I feel.
When it comes to Ginger Dread, which I know it's so brief and everything, and Josh got on me, it's like you have all this stuff to do, you have this world that you can expand upon, and I feel like I've been cheated. Like I'm summarizing, but it's like I feel cheated myself because it's like I need to get these ideas out. It's like I got to exercise demons. It's not 100%. It's not even maybe 20% of what I really want to do, but I will try to actually expand upon, revise, and actually expand, maybe even do a like 40-60 page story, just nothing but like Ginger Dread, like beginning, middle, and end as a volume, whatever. Kind of like when they did those Prestige formats comics, or like I said, like the European style where it's like a 50-60 page story, like those albums.
Mm-hmm.
And which I honestly think like that's the best way to go. It's like if you have artists, like another thing about comics in general, you have these wonderful people that make beautiful art, but they can't do 4-6 pages of floppy stories. But if you say, okay, we're not going to put a release time, we'll wait till you're actually done with the art, then we'll go ahead and start promoting it and everything. Like, a couple months down the line, it's like with, like, hey, you have this, like Travis Charest, he did a book, series of strips called Space Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like French, and they were all like one panel. And like basically, if you break it down, if you take a standard comic page, and like 4 panels can fit in one page, and It's just about pretty much every panel / page, when you look at it, breaks down almost like it's cliffhanger like, but because it flows so well, it's like it's not cinematic, not really. It's more of like one of those old school like Sunday comic strips in a way. It's really strange but beautifully rendered. I think he does a 1-to-1 ratio. He does not draw big and then shrink. He draws like at standard size, which I think that's Charlie Adler, who does Walking Dead, does. Like he doesn't do standard 11x17 paper. He just does like whatever 8.5x11, like with like borders on the inside of it, and then just copies it in, scans it in, and whatever. That is the kind of, that 40, 60 page little sweet spot for me. Like these people, like that could be a solid story where you could go on and like you can almost treat that as a volume, and like a lot, like Black Sad is like 4 or 5 of like 3 or 4 of those stories combined in like one hardcover.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic way of storytelling, because that 40, 60 pages may not hold you over as much as a 120 page graphic novel, but it's a lot more realistic and achievable, because 100 pages of a comic is a lot. It is not. It takes a long time. So you could do, say, 2, if not 3 of those 40, 60 pagers in a year, where if you do 120, maybe you only do 1. Like you do 1, depending on how fast you are. If I could like curb somebody's style, like a John Romita Jr., where he could do or a Kirby, like cranking out pages upon like 20 pages a week or something along those lines. I would do it. If I could say, Larry, you have to give away 5 years of your life. All right, fine. I'll do it. I'll do it to get that kind of style, so I could produce that. And have that. This day and age, there are possibilities out there. Digital distribution first and foremost. Get it out there, because that's another thing about the downside about OGNs. The original graphic novel is marketing, like getting your name out there. Because say what you will about floppies, floppies do have one thing: even if they don't sell that great, you can't have the word gets spread.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I heard about that book. I've not bought it. I'm gonna wait for the trade, but I've heard about it. And it's like that's a downside. That's one of the. But you also, like you said, it's like Kat said, it's a loss leader. Unless you got tax, unless you're, it's like a tax haven and everything like that. If you're able to sell, like extremely limited amounts or something, like it's not that feasible. Also, storage. That's another thing people forget. Storage. If you're gonna, I remember having a ton of these. I got rid of a lot of them. I've sold a lot of them, actually. I did this series called Boats, based on a true story. They're like this kind of square bound autobiographical comics. And the only thing I changed is like I took 1 or 2 people out of the story to make it more streamlined. And it was like there's like 3 or 4 short stories inside of it that actually happened to me, and they're horrifying when you boil it down. They're funny. I play them off as funny, but they're horrifying. Like having a shotgun, like I'm firing my first shotgun and knock me down, I think I'm dying, because it hurts so much, stuff like that. Or, like there's other stuff in there. But with that being the case, it was hard to store them things because they were much bigger. There were not that many. There's still mini comics, but not really. But having a ton of trades or a ton of trades are easier because that's one sale, not, I'm running low on issue 2, I'm running low on issue 4 or something along those lines, where the graphic novel is the graphic novel. The collection is the collection. Whether it is a digital presentation like First, whether it's like serialized online, which I understand why people do that, but the digital, unless you do it in a widescreen format, like you take half a comic book page and in the middle is like you have a top part and a bottom part and it's landscape for the computer, it doesn't look right. Because a lot of the time, if people looking at PC, you'll have people looking on your phone, you can adjust and zoom in, this and that. But it just looks weird to do it digitally. And I've never fully embraced the digital comic. I don't really read digital comics. I mean, it's like as far as like ongoing web comics. I mean,
yeah.
But it's weird. I can't, and it's hard for me to accept something I can't physically own and touch. And it's something like, oh, oops, we've had a disagreement with the company. We're taking the book away. You pay money for it, but you can no longer have it, and we're not giving refunds. I'm sorry. That doesn't make me feel good. I don't like that one bit.
Now, Josh and Kat, you guys do digital, right? Like you have your comics available in digital form. Do you find that to be beneficial or successful as in comparison to the print, or?
Very much so. Basically, I know when digital first came out, there was this big rush and everybody was saying, oh, digital is going to kill print media. And then there was the swing backward. Basically, when the dust settled, those who prefer digital buy digital, and those who prefer print buy print. And you'd be a fool to not cater to both markets, really. I haven't seen one hurt the other sales at all. In fact, they tend to complement each other and can entice more sales, because a person may buy it digitally thinking, I can spend $1, $2, to test out, test the waters, as it were, find they love it, and decide, you know what, I really want this book sitting on my shelf. And then they buy it physically. So there's that. Also, just to get back to, helping to educate those who may not know the economics of floppy versus graphic novels. Now, when we first started 01, that question did come up. Would we do floppies? And again, though I prefer graphic novels, I wasn't going to make the definitive choice until I did the math. The rule when selling your book is the rule of 3 to 1. One copy should pay for the price of printing 3 of your books.
Mhm.
That is always the rule. And floppies don't make that. When I was pricing print on demand at the time, floppies were costing between $2.50 and $3 each to print. That's not counting selling it. And you see that, and it's like, no wonder they're costing $5 now. And even costing $5 at $2.50 as your print cost, that's not even counting shipping them. You're not meeting the 3 to 1. In fact, you're barely meeting the 2 to 1 rule. Where with graphic novels typically cost between $3 and $5 a unit to print. You sell them for 15 to 20 bucks each, you're definitely making back your money. So just a little economics there.
That's what's more enticing, because you look at it. I mean, though I'm, the Untrash is going to be it's going to be a one shot, 16 pages, full color cover, ash can size, which is 8.5 by 5.5, 5.5 by 8.5. Maybe a little less than that because I have to trim down.
And I know you hand make yours with love, and they are worth every penny. So I'm not counting your books, Larry.
I know. It's like I'm not taking it personal, but it's like there are people that my biggest problem, like when it comes down to that, it is different. It is a DIY aspect as well, different from print on demand. And there's a lot of people, you look at the prices, like whether it's Create Space or Kablam or Print Ninja, whatever, no matter where you go, whether it's print on demand, offset, what have you, you have that issue of, if the book costs, let's say, if you get lucky and you can, let's say, order 1,000 copies and it costs like $1.20 to manufacture this floppy, you still got to store 1,000 copies. It's not cheap to store that, unless you have unless you have a big house, a big basement, you have a very accessible attic. It's not going to be easy. And to go and to have it, and also it's kind of hard to move a floppy. It's like, it's one thing. It's hard to move floppies of Superman or Batman or Spider-Man or the X-Men. It's hard to move that. You're trying to move a floppy of an unknown quantity. And no matter how good the book is, like, how many good books have just been it was like, oh, would you rather have the modern classic, like that's, or it's like retroactively, oh, that's a classic from a hidden gem, or would you rather have the thing flying off the shelves? And more often than not, it's like, oh man, I found this book that I hadn't heard about in forever, or whatever, like that kind of thing. But the graphic novel, the OGN, the collection of whatever, if it's original story or if it's digitally presented in the first place, like a collection of web stories, that being the aspect, you have a better chance of getting somebody's attention. It's like, oh, this is a story. This is a full story. I'm not getting a tiny fraction of a bigger story. It's because one time I was reading the Atomic Robo series. I don't know if y'all have ever read that. by Clevenger and Wegner. Have you ever heard of the Atomic Robo?
No.
Yeah, well, it's like because they were doing miniseries. It's like 5-issue miniseries. Like this is like Atomic Robo and whatever the Fighting Scientists of Tesla issue 1 through 5, and then they would collect it. And like I think the individual issues wouldn't sell that great, but it would kind of be active as advertising for the collection down the line, which is unfortunate because it's like you want like at that point just make the graphic novel, just make it a OGN instead of a collection. But and that right there, I want that to be the case. I want the books to have a story. I want that to have that. All right, this is a collection. That's a whole story. Boom, there you go. And that's the thing about Casefile Arkham, which I'm talking about because I love it. But you have a whole story right then and there. But a lot of these comics, like whether it doesn't hook me if you don't have that prospect of actually having a ending to it, or at the very least a great breaking point, like Volume 1, Volume 2. This is issue 1 of 5 or 1 of 4. I'm like, okay, I assume that you will actually, and usually that assumption will be correct, that at that end of the last issue will actually have an ending to it, not just a BS cliffhanger. And that right there is important. But I don't know y'all's thoughts on that, but
No, I agree. Actually, I mean, unfortunately, the open-ended comic is because of superheroes, it just can't be done. It's better if there are stories with beginnings, middles, and ends that the creative team knows the beginning, middle, and end. Now, if something happens along the line in the creative process, it's like, you know what, the story would be so much better if we went in this direction. That's fine. You had an idea of where you were going. You found a better place to go. You now have another end point. That's great. Do that. Stick with that. This open-ended thing, no. I do not accept that. That's not good storytelling. You can start another story later. End this one first. Okay.
Yeah, I really think that when it comes down to that, when it comes down to those open-ended stories, the best X-Men story will never be told because you can't actually have a finite ending to that book. All-Star Superman, I guess it counts because it is a out of continuity. It's its own thing that can count. Dark Knight Returns counts because it's out of continuity, even though like they try to bring stuff back in and sequels to it. But you can do that because it's a finite story because it's out of continuity. Continuity is a great thing and a terrible thing all at the same time. It's a long-running chalkboard where some stuff gets erased or like it's still there but it's very faded. That kind of stuff is fine. But to tell a good story and a long-lasting story, you got to have that finite, and it's got a beginning, middle, and end.
Well,
and a lot of people don't want to do that.
Also, the in vogue thing to do is this countless end of the world stories or big scale stories.
Or like this thing where the whole half of the universe dies stories.
Yeah, it's like that's not a story. That is, well, an event. But that's not a story. What makes a story is, as you guys were saying earlier, it's the characters. And, give me a reason to give a shit. I don't really care if the universe is going to blow up if I don't care who the players are who are supposedly going to be saving us. Where actually a story that I keep thinking about is, you ever read Garth Ennis's Fury?
Fury. Which one's that?
Old Man Nick Fury.
Oh, Fury, my war gone by.
Yeah.
I'm the one with Goran Parlov doing the art. Which that is that book was so good. When the Vietnam segment, the one in Central America with Barracuda. Oh God, that segment with the dead baby, where Barracuda they ripped the belly of a pregnant woman open, and then Barracuda has stomped on the this fetus and then kicks it in Nick Fury's face. Like, that was just fucked up. And I was like, this is the kind of shit. This is what happens. This like CI Black Ops shit. And then it's like the French were trying to keep Vietnam, and they got this like former Nazi, like this like fucking SS stormtrooper. And it's like, we have to do anything we can to keep Vietnam from falling out of our hands. Oh, that kind of shit. It's great. And it's like, but that works only as a closed circuit, beginning, middle, and end. It couldn't work anyplace else.
Well, not only that, but the story wasn't the mission that Fury and his small little group of young, kids are doing. The story is him. And it's him realizing he's getting old, and it's him realizing the world is changing, and him watching this, spoiler alert, cut to 10 seconds in the future, him watching his squad die in really horrific ways right in front of him. And they're only there because he's there. And him coming to terms with that, that's what made that story for me. It wasn't, it was a mission to save the world or anything like that. It was his fight. And it's those stories that make these things worth it. And so, who cares if, the universe is going to blow up? It's the people, that matter.
Or that Metropolis gets torn to shreds. Or
yet again.
Yeah.
And visually, sometimes that stuff is just boring to look at because it's so overdone. Just like all this instructions and laser beams flying around with no impact, like somebody get blown away like 50 feet away, and then you don't even see what happened to them afterwards. And there's no visual impact for the reader. There's no emotional impact in that. Like sometimes intimate stuff is just more visceral, and you just connect to it more.
Yeah, and that's important, that visceral moment. But sorry, I was interrupting you, Kat.
I was going to say it's the difference between Black Hawk Down and Michael Bay.
Yeah, though I love The Rock, yeah, Black Hawk Down's much better. It's like that is a problem. Like when you have like that, it's what you're going for. You're going for that full-on popcorn. You're going for a visceral gut punch, and that gut punch, you do it too many times, you can turn people away. It's like, I understand, like there is a such, like you can soften it up and make it more popcorn friendly, but if everything was visceral, it would, like, I couldn't do that 100% of the time. Like I could pepper it in if I was doing it, but having it every single time, unless that's what, that's your thing, that's fine. But I couldn't stomach it myself. It's like, as much as I love that, just that brutal realism, or as far as fiction goes, it just doesn't work as a, it doesn't work in that aspect in the long run, because that brutality, it gets just so oppressive, and like the dark cloud hanging over your head. I just couldn't stomach it. I really couldn't. I wanted to ask you, I know Josh and Kat's stance on this, but Daniel, how do you feel about variant covers?
Like, I just don't see the point in them anymore. I mean, I don't think I've seen the point in them when I was a kid, but at least, it's funny, like, and I saw your post today. That was funny because it's like, even those stupid gimmick covers with like, it's like a foil has like more of a point than like a variant cover. Like now it's like,
because that was the only cover, and that was the thing. It's technically, it is a gimmick, but there is no, here's the what do you call it, die cut cover with the hologram card. Here is the gatefold cover variant. Here is the bullet hole cover variant. No, it's just only one cover. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all you get.
Exactly. I'd rather have that than the variant cover now. And plus, it's like, I feel like comics need to go back to a back to basics mode, and I'd rather just see the person who drew it, the interior, draw the cover. And
Damn right. Damn right. That's right.
Agree completely.
And just have that, connection to like, oh, we respect the artist enough to draw his own cover, and we hired him because we thought he was good. And I get this thing, and I don't know if people probably disagree. I don't know, but they get these guys who don't draw comics to do the cover, and they only do covers and get famous from just doing covers. And as a fan, I just see that disconnect of like, okay, what
Art
is that?
Germ. That guy,
I mean,
Art Germ.
I love Art Germ, by the way. His art is
Like,
amazing, but it's
but it's like that's poster art, and they're just calling like, hey, we slap this on a cover, so some fool have to buy extra 20, 30 issues just to get this cover, or some crap like that, like one of those 1 in 25 variants. Like, oh, you had to buy 25 issues just to get one of these. Like, what? And there's people that'll do it, and it's like those people, like it's like everybody's like, oh, if you have guns, you should be rounded up. No, we should hunt people down that have to order 25 issues just to get one variant. It's like this isn't back in the 90s when you didn't have to load up an image. It'd be like it. Now you're just like, okay, there's the image. I appreciate it. What are you gonna do with that cover? It's just gonna sit in a box or in those museum glasses. Oh, I'm gonna put it up in my office. I'm like, why don't you just print it out and then put it up? Go down to the Kinko's and get it blown up.
When I worked for a comic book store, what got me were the guys who would wait for me to unbox the new shipment so that they could be the first one to get those variant covers, because they needed to put their kid through college, and that was going to be worth something someday.
Oh my God.
I do find it funny with Art Germ. It's like his art is great, but he draws these sexualized characters, and you have the comics trying to say they're getting away from sexualized characters, but they need it though for this, right? Like they need the dirt to sell, right? Like their dirty little secret that they have to hire this sexualized character. I mean, the sexualized artwork to sell their work. And I love, all kind of exploitation. Like I love exploitation movies and everything, but comics say they're getting away from that, and then they have this, right? So what does that mean?
They want to have their cake and eat it too. They know if they went full bore, no, we're not going to exploit anything like that. When DC pulled that cover, that Batgirl cover, the one with the Joker, which I'm like, okay, whatever. That's not a bad cover. It's like, oh, that's offensive, and it's triggering, and I'm like, oh, it's just a cover.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't look at it.
Don't like it. Buy my books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazon.com. Type in Casefile Arkham, and it'll bring up the results and purchase that. If you have Prime, you get it shipped free.
Yeah. So it's like the industry knows they need it. They know they need to sell, but they also say they don't. Like at the same time, it's weird. Like,
well, they're definitely learning the hard way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and that being the case, so you got these people that. I understand you have I'd be fine with if people did more if you want to sell prints, posters, that's not something I'd ever buy. I'm not a fan of prints and posters. If somebody wants to do it, I'm not going to spend my own money on that. That's just not my thing. I don't. What am I going to do with a print? It's like these damn lemons. What am I supposed to do with these? I don't know. I can put them on my walls. Oh my God, this. I have one print on my wall. And it is a a Cliff Chiang. It's the Breakfast Club poster, but with the Teen Titans. And,
nice.
And it's great. I've had it for God knows how many years now. I remember picking it up from because he was he was getting ready to leave, and I was like it was a kind of cool talk to him for a little bit. I bought a sketchbook and I bought that, and I was like, I wanted to buy at least one thing. I was like, I love that cover. I love that image. That's a great image. The whole, and it's a classic. But that is the only thing I've been given prints. Like you get, pre-order tickets for a convention. They go ahead and get them cheap. Extra $15 off. They usually give you that free print. But I'm not going to go out of my way to pay for that. But there's a lot of people that will pay extra money for those variants, and those books just sit around and collect dust. And it's artificial inflation. You're actually not selling those books, and that's the biggest problem. When you're not selling those books, when you don't have an actual market, because the stores buy it, but the stores will buy it, but the customers won't. They'll just sit there and collect dust.
Actually, often stores are required to buy them.
Oh, the variants, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to buy this much to and also they hold it over your head. Oh, if you want this, you got to buy this over here, and that's why direct sales kick ass.
And that's also why I just don't understand why we don't have a full scale revolt. why it is that, I think finally people have had enough. I don't know about store owners, but people have had enough. But, they just keep abusing their readership. They treat the readership like garbage. Like, we're going to do this and you're going to buy it because you're stupid. And that's the attitude.
This treating their readers like they're dumb, and there's a lot of people. I'll leave it this way: you don't have to like following every writer and artist, and then they said something I don't like. How dare they? It's like, well, don't follow them. I just like I'll unfollow this person. I'm not gonna. It's really cringy to see somebody unfollowed, and I'm like, yes, virtue signal, my friend, virtue signal. You'll flap wings and fly away to the heavens. Like just if you don't like it, don't suffer it. And it's this, like, how dare they? It's like there are people out there that bust their ass. They're doing their own thing. They went from being, art students, or they drew in high school and they said, I'm going to better myself. I'm going to make my own comics. Go after those people. They are guaranteed to have good content. They're not going to treat you like garbage. And to suffer like, well, that they did something nice in the past. Like, it doesn't matter. If they're treating you like shit and you're taking it, you deserve to be treated like shit because you are a piece of shit.
Someday if you get better.
Yeah. It's just like Josh and Kat are not going to treat you like shit, unless you're really weird, some domination, being masochistic. I don't know, whatever. It's like that's called sex.
They'll pay him first.
Blunt as fuck, but I will always treat somebody with respect as long as they treat me with respect. So
I'm the same way. It's like as long as somebody's not being a total dick, like I could a little busting balls here and there, that's fine. Yeah. If I'm busting my ass on something and you just bust my balls right out the gate, and not I'm like give me a compliment and a backhanded compliment, I'm fine. I'm like, okay, this thing is a little bit, but I could take it. But it's one of these like just busting my balls right out the gate. It's like, I'm just messing with you, just having a laugh, man. Just having a laugh. Like,
no, Larry, I'll take it a step further. Writers write stories to be read. And why would I treat people who read my stories like shit? Yeah. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. That people would actually sit down, pay the money. Okay, well, if you tore up my work, fuck you. You're a piece of garbage. I'll shit on you in public. But I mean, if you're actually willing to spend money on my book, sit down, read it, and then enjoy it, that is your bread and butter. That is the reason you're in this, right? That's why you're doing this, right?
And that's the biggest thing right there. You actually have a vested interest to treat your audience like shit right out the gate. There are certain people that they are fucking shit. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, I'll suffer enough. I'll suffer a little bit, but if you're outright just shitting, like, if you're shitting all over me, I'm supposed to just take it. Fuck you and fuck off. And it's like, I understand that, but treating everybody like shit. It's like when I did that, like that one show I did, and I still talk about it because it's so fucking traumatizing and memorable. Because fucking female to male, this woman with a beard and curly hair and problem glasses saying no Caucasians to attend diversity in comics panel. I'm like, that's fucking, you can't write this shit. This is hilarious. And then have this bullshit where like fucking cult members are trying to recruit me, and I got Jesus behind me and pews and the fucking the sepulcher or whatever, all that shit, and all that. Like, it was the weirdest fucking thing. That Vietnamese girl knocked over my shit and didn't even apologize. The Mexican dude is like, well, Texican, talking about this elementary school teacher's giant tits and how to calm him down, she let him feel like, I mean, it was a weird fucking time. But everybody that came by my table, hey, how you doing today? Like, I was having half the time I was having a miserable time until like right after lunch, and then started picking up because I was sitting there. I could have been like, fuck off, you ain't buying, get stepping, motherfucker. I could have been like that, but I was like, hey, like, and I was, and part of the time I was like honestly polite, and the person I was there with, my friend at the time, he was miserable as fuck, and he was like he would light up around certain people. Most of the time he's like just miserable, so he could fuck off. But it was this
fun one for you, Larry.
Okay.
Yeah, again, back when I was doing conventions, you'd occasionally get these really, really autistic types that just had no ability to interact with people socially.
Mhm.
And some of them, just they were awkward kids, and so what? You deal with it. It's we're all kind of like that, I guess, if you're obsessed and into comics. But then you'd get certain people, and San Francisco was particularly bad for this. You'd get guys. I had a guy who literally walked with it. I've read your books. You're not that good.
And that shit, like that shit, it's like you could
And
say
I'm like, okay.
you could say like there's somebody said, well, that my person might be autistic. Well, I might just be an asshole. Like they've been they've never been told, they've never had their ass kicked, like never been humbled in life. It's like the Iron Sheik, fuck him in the ass, humble him. It's like that kind of shit. It's fucked up,
but you're a Muslim, Iron Sheik. Well, isn't that against the Prophet? I do not care. I will go to hell just to humble him by fucking him in the ass.
the camel clutch. I'll piss himself. But yeah, it's fucking great. It's funny as shit. But to see these people, like it is really unfortunate. That's a lot of you have a lot of people like I've seen it happen at Heroes Con over in Charlotte. When I've gone in past years, like I was walking by a table. It's like, yeah, your book, it wasn't that good. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And it's like not even constructive. It's like where I'd mentioned Paul Azaceta, the artist. He did he's done some work. He worked for DC and I think some stuff at Marvel. He had a book. I think it was either Image or Boom put it out. It was called Graveyard of Empires. I'm like, oh, that means Afghanistan because I know about nobody can really conquer Afghanistan. I was like, really cool cover. It's a skull with a flower growing out of it. I was like, that's fucking awesome. I like that. It's like really indicative. So I'm reading the book and I'm like, oh, it's a fucking war comic about Afghanistan and fucking the warlords and opium stuff. I'm like, this is great. I'm loving this. And the last few pages turns into a fucking zombie comic. And I was like, oh, they were telling a great war story because it's about this guy is like, like struggling with being in Afghanistan, like, getting antsy, wanting to get the fuck out of there. I'm like, this is great because you don't, and also dealing with, you have some people that look like civilians, but they could easily be, suicide bombers and shit like that. It's like, that's, that tension and that terror is building up. And I'm like, that's great. That's just a great fucking, and then they ruin it by with a fucking zombie comic at the end. And apparently that was in the solicits for it. Like they kind of like alluded to that. I'm glad, and I was like, I wish I'd kind of read that because I wouldn't been, so heartbroken by that. And I was like, the art was great in the book. I love the pacing and everything. And like the way you did the panels and everything. Everything was great until it turned into a zombie comic. And he got upset with me. And I was like, I understand why he's upset, but it's like, I'm like, it was a great war comic. And he's basically like, war comics don't sell, like that kind of stuff. It's like, most comics don't sell if you want to boil it down. It doesn't matter what genre. You want to boil it down. Like, so instead of actually telling an interesting story that stands out, you're just going, oh yeah, but it's a zombie comic. Like fucking Image already had like Walking Dead, that 68, like the reference to the Night of the Living Dead, also like Vietnam zombies and whatever. All that shit. It's like zombie. Like fuck zombies. Fuck off all that shit. I don't care how interesting everything else is. It's a zombie comic. Fuck off.
What about sparkly vampires, Larry?
Fuck off with that shit. Vampires should wear fucking bones, leather jackets, and listen to Lou Graham and Gerard McMahon.
Exactly.
Fucking Bowie.
Bauhaus.
Oh, Bauhaus. There you go too. Also, In Excess.
Oh dear God, no.
No. I'm referencing Lost Boys.
Are you a suicide blonde?
No, I am not.
I've got a fun story for you about zombies and vampires and all that shit in comics. When I was doing San Diego Comic-Con every year, one of the things I would do just for research is I would go around to
oh dear God,
all the tables that I could and ask people to give me their pitch of what their book's about, just to see what their pitch was. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I began to realize every year had a different theme that everyone was trying to bandwagon on. And it was a great way to get a sense of where the industry was going and what not to do, or just what you were dealing with that year. And for like a couple years, it was always, it's like Buffy, or it's just like Buffy, but with, instead of vampires, was the pitch for the longest time. And then it became, it's just like Walking Dead, but with. And then that went on for a few years. And then the very last time I did this experiment, it was at Emerald City Comic Con. And this is when I realized, you know what? Fuck it. There's not even any point in coming to the convention anymore. And that was the pitch was, I got a trans character.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That was the trend. I got a trans character.
See, that kind of shit, like I used to go, I only went 2 years. I went 2015, was it 2014 to 2014, 2015 to or was it 2013? I went 2 years in a row. I think it was 2014 and then 2015 to Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland, where like that's like one of the those small press is supposed to be. You go in there, it's like 400 people crowded into a small ballroom, so it's all humid from the body heat, patchouli, BO, farts, vape pen smell. It's everything you can think of. It's the worst possible scenario. 2000 last year I'd gone, like you'd see the hey, it's basically everything had a style of like Adventure Time for the most part, and then the like Steven Universe Adventure Time, very cartoony. Everything's like togetherness and no walls, no barriers. Everything, all love is equal. Basically, deviancy everywhere. It's sugar-coated deviancy. It's like.
But God damn it! If I want some deviancy, it better be fucking forbidden and taboo.
Exactly. That's what makes deviancy fun. If you make it open and okay, it takes the fun out of it. It's like, then it's like, you know what, Stevie? If you want to put a ball gag in your mouth, that's just fine. It doesn't matter if you're 10 years old. Like, what the fuck?
Actually, Larry, we've got to admit though, there is a deviancy you're not allowed to do, and you and I both have gotten criticism in our books for this. Big tatas.
Oh
yes, well, that right there. Even with Kat being the fucking spokesperson, it's like, all right,
because I'm reality.
It's fucking Jessica Rabbit over there. Roll Jessica Rabbit out. It's like it's one of those things. It's like that's the reality you live every day, and there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable with that. It's like, here's the thing: there are some really ugly women out there, and there's some really fucking pussified men that they'll bend over backwards. They'll sell their soul just for a piece of ass, and that right there is like, they have no confidence in themselves. So instead of being confident and like going out and like approaching a woman and asking her out and just doing, hey, how you doing? You want to go get something to eat? Hey, what's ask the name first, but you know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, you know what? That's just trouble. That's troublesome and problematic, and that's exploiting that woman's body. And I'm guaranteed somebody made her look like that and dress like that, and that we need to free her mind of that. And I'm a good ally. And then like, drop. Here comes some roofies or something.
Larry,
yeah.
You have no idea how many people are absolutely convinced that Josh beat me into looking as good as I do.
You could not accept
Josh, no.
No. How many times you've gotten that speech?
Yeah.
Oh, I respect you, and I'm not. I don't look at your body, and
it's like, why? I do.
See, and that right there, that's like self-confidence, and a lot of them don't have that. Like me, I'm a piece of shit. I know that. I'm a piece of shit in my soul and in my body as well, and my mind. So I'm not going to lie to that. I'm not going to fucking think I'm the greatest thing ever. It's like, when people give me compliments, like, don't do it. Please don't. It's like, Larry, you're so kind and nice. Like, fuck off. No, I'm not. I'm an asshole. I'm not like, I will fucking.
You're honest.
Yeah.
Well, I am the old the fable about the scorpion and the frog. I'm a Scorpio after all. I'm born in November, so I'm a fucking Scorpio. So I'm a
Explains
fucking
a lot.
yeah. And so it's like, like, well, Larry, why'd you sting me in the middle of the river? Because I'm a scorpion, asshole. You didn't realize that. You don't believe what I say. But no, it's like it is like that in a way. But there are people, when it comes to drawing a beautiful woman, they have issues with that. They have to, and honestly, I think it's okay. I've drawn women that are short, tall, muscular, and fat, plain, big tits, small tits, big ass, no ass, big thighs, little thighs, skinny legs,
Amputee.
long legs. Yeah, amputee, fucking one eyes, fucking missing arms, missing legs, like shit like that. It doesn't matter. Variety, like diverse, no, variety counts. Because if you have everyone looking the same, if everyone had that, everyone had the thin waist, the big tits, all that stuff, like 90% of the time, it'd be boring as fuck. But if you had interesting visuals, the variety of visuals, that is what matters more.
I agree.
Yeah, this is like really funny to see people get so outraged about that look of a woman being woman, and it's like if you have like it, I do agree on some regards. Like if you have a character supposed to be like 14, 15, 16, like when they drew Kitty Pryde back when John Byrne drew Kitty Pryde in the Claremont X-Men, where she looked like a kid, she looked like a teenager, she wasn't like, she didn't have big old honking tits, all that stuff, which there are teenage girls. I went to school, that happened,
Mhm.
but to
A 12-year-old who had huge ones.
exactly, it's weird to see that drawn, because it's like, well, did that, if it's reality, it's one thing.
Yeah, it makes one uncomfortable.
But yeah, I understand.
No one wants to look at a 12-year-old and say, "Oh, nice tits." So that's really disturbing.
Yeah, it's like you on that 13-year-old, you really drew nice tits. Like, whoa, what? No. It's like, you got to be all defensive about that. But yeah, it's really fucked up to actually see that happen. And we got a question from the chat. Evan Boyette wants to know, what's your next work, Josh? What do you got coming out next? Like, what's the next thing supposed to be published?
Okay, well, I want to wait a year to get the first two Arkham books to build up a larger audience, and then we'll jump into book 3, hopefully. That is the plan. I've already got an outline for it, and it's got a treatment written up. But as for the following year, I'm going to put out a number of prose stories. As mentioned a little bit earlier, I have an anthology of post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk retellings of fairy tales, ironically. I've got a story in the book, and then there's a handful of other writers that have stories in the book, including, oh God, my brain just froze.
Jeff Noon?
Jeff Noon, Nick Cole, a whole bunch of people have stories in it, and I'm really anxious to get that out. And I'm going to try and do an illustration for every one of the stories. As for the most current thing, I just finished it today. I've got a long-form short story. It's come out to about 17,000 words called Who Saved Who? And I don't know. This is probably going to sound thoroughly bizarre. I don't hope I alienate the entire chat on this one, or Ed, because he's awesome. But it's about an astronaut and his rat. But to elaborate on that, what it is when I was 19 years old, I was caught in a random act of violence, a random shooting. No, I'm not going to get into it because it still haunts me to this day. But essentially, wrong place at the wrong time. Somebody started opening fire, and I got hit in the back and nearly died. Predictably, this has left me with post-traumatic stress, and it took me a lot of time to come to terms with that. How long ago was it? 2 years ago you introduced me to the to Dezette?
Yeah, about two and a half, actually.
About 2.5 years ago, Kat wanted rodents or rats, so we got them, and I was terrified of them. And I ended up befriending one of them, and it was just an incredible experience. One, he was rats are smart. You have no idea how smart rats are, but this one was abnormally and unusually bright, even for a rat. And just having him as a friend made an incredible difference with me and my post traumatic stress. And during that time, a whole bunch of ideas kind of collided in my head. And that was I'd done a lot of research into humans and rats, and we've developed alongside each other. They eat what we eat. They get sick with what we get sick. We test all our medicines on them, and we've done all this crazy research on them that's kind of actually influenced the evolution of the domesticated rat. Um, but then also, I was walking in the park here in San Diego, and there's a lot of war vets here. And we'd walked across a basketball game going on with a bunch of veterans, and they were all amputees. They had all were wheelchair bound, and they were playing this incredibly intense game of basketball. But I'm not sure how the rules were figured out or how they managed it. But their dogs, their companion dogs, were part of the game and were running alongside them on beside the wheelchairs as they played basketball, it was just fascinating. And so there was kind of a collision of ideas in my head, and I came up with this story to kind of, I guess, attribute to the fact that this little rodent did made such a difference in my life while he was alive. And it's a story about an astronaut who, in the future, he works as essentially a salvage worker, where they go around and they pull old satellites out of orbit so that they clear up space junk. And there's a horrible accident, and he loses his leg, and he ends up on Earth, and he can't work anymore. He can't go to space, and he's dealing with the post-traumatic stress and the shock of losing. He saw someone die in orbit, and just having his entire life turned upside down. And he ends up getting paired with a companion rodent after because his doctor, he essentially, the astronaut can't deal with it. He almost overdoses on pills and wine on accident. And the doctor says, well, essentially, we're either going to lock you up in a facility or you take a companion. So he picks the companion, and it's a rat. Now, there's an experiment going on, and this is real, by the National Institute of Health, in which they're splicing human DNA with rats so that they can have a model of a rat to test Alzheimer's medications on, and it's making the rats incredibly smart. There are also lots of experiments about using cybernetics to create mental links between humans and rats. This is real. So in the story, he's got this rat that's intelligent. His brain is 50% human, and they communicate. The rat can understand English, and the rat can send him messages via text message. And it's this narrative of kind of these two people. It turns out that the rat.
You're giving it away. You're giving it away.
Okay.
Shut up.
Okay, I won't tell anymore.
That's good.
But,
Editor stepped in and said, no more.
Story. So there, you don't want to give away too much.
But that's the basis of the story, and it's just a lot of it, again, is directly related to my experience and just what a difference having a very smart animal as a friend can make when you've got post-traumatic stress. And the other thing that really, I mean, we've had other rodents since, but again, Zed was frighteningly intelligent. And the thing was, he chose me. Like I said, at first, I wanted nothing to do with the rats. I was afraid they'd bite me. I've never been all that good with animals, but he chose me. And then I started getting obsessive about, well, it's obvious he's trying to tell me things. So I started researching rodents and how they communicate. And we'd actually worked up this weird shorthand of, rats will use their teeth to communicate. And there were like series of like loose nips and bites on my finger to let me know what he meant, or he'd point with his nose, and he understood a ridiculous level of my own vocabulary when I'd say things to him. And I don't know, I had to put that to words. It was such a key moment in my life, and it really did change me. So that's what the story's done. I finished it literally today. And because Ed is awesome, if you would like to read it for free as a proofreader, direct message me.
All right, so there you go. That's a nice little look into the upcoming story.
So with that mouthful, it's going on 8:30 here, and I realize it's probably a hell of a lot later for you two.
11:37 here.
So I'd like to wrap this up for.
No problem. It's like, but this has been fun. I mean, any final thoughts, Daniel?
No, it's just I'm working on Red. I'm gonna get that.
When can we expect the graphic novel?
The graphic novel, it's I'm gonna try to get on Amazon by like in the next few weeks. So very soon. And I'm working on volume 2. Volume 2, I actually have a lot of pages done. I got about 50 pages done.
So 50 pages?
Yeah, in pencil.
But still, I mean, you're doing pencil to color, so that's, you take the inking process out. How many pages are you shooting for, roughly?
It might be a little longer than the first one. The first one's 88 pages. Well, it's 88 pages. That was 88 pages plus some sketches.
That's good. That's a good range right there.
Yeah, so it's around that range. And I got some fight scenes coming up that I might want to.
Probably about 100 pages, all said and done, probably.
Yeah, it's like either 100 or less. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's like, wow, if you're already about halfway done or getting close to it, wow, maybe Christmas comes early as Red Volume 2 has appeared, or something along those lines. I mean, that'd be interesting right there. I mean, for those who want good graphic novels,
it's great getting hooked. Yeah, it's great getting hooked in with you guys too, and online, like with the community and on Twitter, it's getting me real inspired and taking the storyline visually into other directions. Like when people post art and stuff, it's like that's the level I got to be at. Like it just raises the bar, So
well, you are one hell of an artist, Daniel, and it was good meeting you. I mean, seriously, you've got skills.
Oh, thank you so much. And I got to get all your stuff because this is. Well, we have like minds.
In the description, I actually put not only the links to the website for Red, but also for the Amazon search for Casefile Arkham Book 1 and 2, which you can pick up from your friendly neighborhood Amazon, which you get delivered right to your door. But yeah, it's like there are just great comics out there in this community. Hopefully they'll step up more. I see them stepping up. I wish they would. We want good comics. Hopefully that means not just nostalgic Marvel, DC, whatever. Like I want my old Spider-Man back. That's what I mean by good comics. Like, no, you want creator-owned works? Great, that's fine. That's fantastic. But put up or shut up time, folks.
But we need some good superheroes. I mean, that's an American tradition. That is inherently American culture right there. We invented the superhero.
Yep.
So we need we need up our game. There needs to be some good heroes out there.
We need the elementarian, a guy who says no to pulling cats out of trees. They will come down to their own volition. If they don't come down, then they will die up there and become ornaments, death trees. It's exactly
all right, Larry.
Christmas trees. But thank you again, Daniel, Kat, Josh. Thank you all for coming by, and thank you those top chat, Edwin, Braylon, everybody else. So thank you for stopping by, folks. This has been fun. We'll do this again soon. Thursday, got Comic Search coming on. Talk about the shop itself, which a lot of people are very divisive over that. So this is very interesting. And thank you, folks. And we will see you again next time.